Hasan Piker is going viral, and I think this is a good thing because...
Oh, this Keith Edwards guy was another guy that I thought was good, who maybe isn't.
It gives us an opportunity to talk about things within the Democratic Party and on the left that are obviously bubbling under the surface and have risen to the top after Hasan Piker made this statement. But I do think that it's worth talking about. It's worth exploring. It's worth saying, who do we want to be? Where do we want to go? Who do we...
Finish the watch video. He says that we would be in a better place if Trump won in 2020. Do you agree? I think we would be in a better place if Trump won in 2020, but not for any reasons that, like, you're playing a huge gamble there by saying we should let him win. The only reason why is because maybe there's a higher chance that he would have retained more of his staff from the first administration to the next instead of getting to redo the entire thing. But, like, maybe he does it anyway. That's a huge gamble. Who knows, you know?
Who want to lead us? Who do we want to vote for? First, let's just go into this clip here, and then I have some thoughts about it. But Hasan Piker was on Jennifer Welch's podcast, I've Had It, and she raised the hypothetical question that if J.D. Vance and Gavin Newsom were running against each other in the general election, would you vote for Gavin Newsom? And here's what they had to say.
For him. Disappointed in
Who
Gavin
do you vote
Newsom.
for, J.D. Vance or Gavin Newsom?
Well, I'd have to vote for Gavin Newsom,
Me
of course,
too.
100%.
I wouldn't blink.
No
What
doubt.
about you, Hasan?
I'd probably vote third party.
You would?
Oh yeah. I mean, at that point, it doesn't even matter. Like, because my policy on this is the same as like my refusal to endorse Kamala Harris. The reason why I did not endorse Kamala Harris was because she did things that were not only unproductive but also unconscionable. And I still stand on that. I still talk about it all the time because people constantly bring it up. They're like, you didn't sufficiently like promote Kamala Harris. You're the reason why she lost. And I'm like, I am
Watched this clip like 7 times
election.
Files on Twitter.
But everybody knows that that's not
get
real,
it.
right?
That part right there went like wildfire, especially that part where he said he'd vote third party. Now, this is what I had to say about this just on Twitter on my own. I said, it is stupid to get mad about a hypothetical election that won't happen for almost 3 years. I stand by that. I think for folks to get whipped up about a stupid fantasy football question is just pointless. I mean, I don't know, push comes to shove. Who knows what things look like in 3 years? It frankly doesn't matter. I think what Hasan is saying.
Okay, actually, you know what? I don't care to hear the 50 millionth take on this. Whatever.
Always.
Damn, we're doing way too much Hasan news today.
Like, it doesn't make sense.
He's one of the most influential political voices of our age. Not on television, not in print,
Is that true?
but streaming live to millions. Hasan Piker doesn't report the news in the traditional sense. He reacts to it.
Let's take a look at what happened, and I'll give you some more commentary in a second.
He filters journalism in real time for an audience that no longer trusts institutions or the traditional media. To
Journalism.
his supporters, he offers an unfiltered alternative. To his critics, he's something far more dangerous. A commentator without guardrails, influence without accountability.
Whoa. You should remember that we have the numbers.
The 34-year-old American streamer has more viewers than some cable networks, no editor, no newsroom oversight, and yet enormous power to shape opinion, outrage, and belief. In a world where algorithms can replace editors, audience trust replaces verification, and accountability is enforced not by law but by comments, likes, and shares, is it still journalism? From war and misinformation to wealth and ideology to the blurred lines between activism and incitement, this is a conversation about power, responsibility,
God,
and the
this
future
music is
of who
hitting
gets to
hard.
define the truth.
Oh my God.
Online streamer Hasan Piker talks to Al Jazeera. Hasan Piker, welcome to Talk to Al
Hasan
Jazeera, and a
Piker.
very, very warm welcome to
Hello.
Doha as well. You're talking to us on the sidelines of this Web Summit here in Qatar, and I think it's fair to say you've spent the last few years pretty much colonising the media landscape. It was traditionally in the hands of mainstream broadcast news networks and other television formats. I think it's fair to say that most of your viewers would not be seen dead getting their news from TV. I mean, you have more people watching you than many major cable news networks do during their prime time hours.
Excuse me, what? How many viewers does he think? How many people does he thinks? How many people does he think watches? I don't even know what the verb's supposed to do with there. Prime time cable has a lot of viewership. We're talking in the like scale of hundreds of thousands or millions. How many viewers does he think people like Hasan or me get? or even like the Burnt Peanut or any of these like massive like Speed is not getting in his live streams like viewership that's rivaling primetime cable news networks. But okay, that's.
But you aren't just a commentator, you're something of a filter as well. You take the work of reporters and you react to it, often in real time. Do you see yourself as a journalist, or do you see yourself as something else, perhaps an algorithm of your generation?
Wow, that's an interesting way to approach it. I don't see myself as a journalist. I do sometimes do journalism, I guess, if I go out on the field and do interviews or do live protest coverage and things like that. But beyond that, I just see myself as a commentator, almost like a one-stop, one-person operation. Normally at CNN and all these other outlets, you have a massive news team, you have producers that are gathering all this.
I feel like I fought on this point before, where like, yes, we're just pundits basically. But I feel like he says, I'm a journalist. Am I hallucinating this? Maybe I don't remember. Okay.
Information ahead of time, feeding talking points to the person who's offering the analysis, and maybe even some other analysts on the desk that are offering color commentary. I just do all of that on my own. It's a one-stop shop.
If you're not a journalist, do you feel that you are perhaps more aware of your innate biases in what you do?
Oh no, absolutely. It's not only am I aware of it, I also
counter them.
Feel as though everyone has innate biases, and I think it's more honest to be upfront about those biases. Although sometimes the audience is not so receptive.
Not so receptive, or not so respectful as well.
Yeah, definitely. I do maintain a position that is fairly unique in American politics. It's definitely not very broadly represented in mainstream media. Anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist. These are perspectives that are not often understood, and I think people that encounter this kind of opinion usually have a negative association with it. They're heavily propagandized towards this worldview. So there are a lot of haters. Yeah.
Being aware of your biases and often being confronted by your apparent biases by your audience, do you think that that's in any way a substitute for accuracy, something that mainstream journalists are beholden to?
I think that constant confrontation keeps me more honest than I feel mainstream reporters would, especially because there's no real-time feedback in mainstream reporting. That confrontation can also turn into content in and of itself, I guess, and can be distracting. But I do feel like that pushback is a good mechanism to keep me honest. One of those
examples of pushback was in February 2022 when you told your audience for weeks that Russia was not going to invade Ukraine. Obviously, we all know that did happen. You insisted it was State Department propaganda. But when the tanks rolled in, you did apologize. Do you often get it wrong?
No, but when I do get it wrong, especially because I'm getting it wrong that in a way that is not in line with the State Department propaganda, if you will, that's something that people never let go of. And it's really interesting because, like I say all the time...
God damn, did I ever do this? I'm trying to think if I ever threw my country under the bus while I was in Israel. I don't think so. I hope not. Ooh, that would feel gross. You're in fucking Qatar, throwing your own country's State Department under the bus? Ooh, but I know that he fucking hates America. Well, he has the aesthetic of hating America. He loves this country. Hasan could not exist in the way that he does in any other country on the planet, and he loves that. But I know he has the aesthetic of hating America, so it makes sense why he would say this.
Mainstream media or people that do this professionally in line with the State Department will almost professionally get things wrong with regular frequency, but they're never really punished for it. It's never really brought up ever again, and it's actually quite helpful for their careers. Like,
do you pronounce croissant like a French person? Yeah. I always go into Starbucks and I'm like, can I get that chocolate croissant? All the time. They love it. They're like, oh my God, is he really French? And I'm like, huh, oui.
Whether it be the coverage in Israel from a lot of mainstream commentary folks, or whether it be no one really getting punished for lying at the behest of the American State Department to go and occupy Iraq.
Are you talking specifically about the United States here? Because there'll be many mainstream journalists around the world thinking, hang on a minute. First and foremost, before we're even allowed to write our first report, we have to study the law. We have to avoid defaming our network or our company that we're happen to be working.
Why do none of these interviews ever just say, bro, what the fuck are you talking about? He's literally in Qatar doing an Al Jazeera interview. They love anti-USA slop. Hell yeah. The bread and butter.
You're saying something is distinctly different, distinctly rotten about the American media landscape.
I wouldn't say it's just the American media landscape. I think it's more so Western media in general. But
he's not going to say all of mainstream media, right? He's going to say the Western. Unbelievable. Nice. Suck up to that foreign propaganda network you're on, bro. Oh my God, shameless.
There are brilliant journalists that work in all of these outlets that I'm speaking of as well.
Like Ryan Graham.
Some of them I know intimately. Mm-hmm. And I'm mostly talking about, it's a more broader criticism, socialist. I guess, where all the way from the BBC, Guardian to CNN and the New York Times. I think these last 2 years of coverage around
Israel-Palestine. Wait, say that real quick.
Israel's genociding.
Okay, there we go. Wait, what is this? I'm not from France.
You're Belgium?
Not Belgium, but France. Merde, ça n'a pas marché.
I'm not from France. Il est extrêmement raciste, je suis choquée.
Do you say pancake or do you say crepe?
Pancake.
You liar.
Pancake. Get him out of here.
In Gaza has made it almost impossible not to notice that there is definitely a bias in the broader reporting in general that often corresponds to America's.
That dude's getting fucked up. Pancake.
Interest in any region, really.
You say you're not a journalist, but you have been accused by your critics of wrongly wearing a blue press vest while reporting out on the field on several occasions. Not just you, several other streamers. Wearing that blue vest that says press enables you to get to places where the majority of the public cannot get. But with that accolade of wearing that vest, it gives you a certain sense of professional responsibility when you are there. When you make a mistake wearing that vest, do you feel that you can easily retreat?
I'm sorry, this is the United States of America. I don't know what perspective this guy is coming from, where the press vest gets you special. What special access is he talking about? Barely depends on the situation. Like where? I know if you tell like an airline your press, sometimes they'll give you preferential rates on shipping. Not shipping, but like having your carry-on luggage or whatever, but the police don't fuck with you as much in protests? Really? I thought Hasan said they specifically targeted the press and everything in protests. Wouldn't that make you like a target?
Back to the position of being a streamer as opposed to as a journalist? A member of the press?
No, I think, well, first of all, I usually wear it so I don't get shot at. And
like, bruh, you're in America. Listen, even with the current, well, actually, no, I wouldn't say that right now. If you're brown or something, and you don't carry a passport with you, sure, maybe you can use this excuse. But bruh, you're not generally getting mowed down in USA protests. Even under Trump, you're not getting mowed down in USA protests. Not yet, at least. Who knows how much longer. Nobody's shooting at you, bruh. Although he's about to say that. I have gotten shot at before.
It does increasingly feel like when we're doing protest coverage in America, it almost comes across like a target, more so than a way to avoid ricocheting 40mm rounds. But I do bear that responsibility. I carry that responsibility with my regular commentary as well.
I mean, some would say you're gaming the system.
When they say 40mm round, are they talking about gas cartridges or whatever? That's what they mean, right? I like how we say 40mm because it almost gives the impression that it's like a bullet. Yes. 40mm bullets. Ugh. Those are gas grenades. Yeah.
By presenting yourself as a bona fide member of the press, while at the same time being something other than a journalist.
I think in this day and age, with the way that the media has evolved, there is a lot of real-time coverage people are offering that also does play that same role, though. So as far as like going out into protest coverage and doing protest coverage in general, I think that is still operating in a similar capacity to what the press would do. The main difference, I would say, in my coverage when I do protest coverage in general is the fact that I
talk to the
make
people.
an effort not to be behind the police line, because usually a lot of mainstream reporters stay behind the police line, and I think that impacts the way.
What does that mean? Is that I'm trying to think if I've ever seen a mainstream reporter behind the police line. Are they almost always like in the crowd, like doing interviews with people and everything? It's possible I just don't watch a lot of protest coverage, or maybe I've missed this, but I feel like almost every interview. Fucking imagine Hasan saying this when Don Lemon, it literally is being federally indicted, has been indicted right now, and is facing potential fucking a decade or whatever in prison because of this FACE Act bullshit. And Hasan has the audacity to say, yeah, they're never actually with the protesters, always behind police lines. I mean, I'm sure there are some maybe that are just like on site and they're just like doing the broadcast coverage or whatever, but I feel like I see a ton of mainstream media people that are out talking to people during the protest and everything, because they're not even generally that dangerous. Jesus.
That they cover these sorts of incidents that are taking place, whereas I try to stay inside of the crowd.
So Let me ask you a personal question. It's perhaps another one of the criticisms leveled at you by your many, many critics. Of course, you have many, many supporters and indeed fans as well. And it's to do with your personal wealth that's been focused upon. You're a millionaire living in a West Hollywood mansion, apparently preaching Marxism. The word grifter comes up a lot. Does that sting?
No. I think it's a misunderstanding of the way that people approach the subject. It's not, I mean, it's something I hear all the time. I try to maintain my ethics in the way that I run, I guess, this entire operation. I run a cooperative corporation, equal say, equal pay.
What does that mean? For what, his merch? What is the revenue this is doing? I run a co-op. Shouldn't you say also, I don't know, for the people who do, would that be part of your language? You say, I run a co-op. Wouldn't you say I'm part of a co-op? Why would you run a co-op? Wouldn't you be part of a co-op if it's actually like equal on all fronts? I don't know. I'm being nitpicky right now, but I also hate this guy, and he's a fucking fake-ass loser piece of shit, so fuck him.
And outside of that, you know, I'm not pushing any like unethical advertising or anything of that nature. I don't run ads any longer. I used to.
What does that mean? I don't push unethical advertising. Motherfucker, you can't run ads anymore. When you could, you were one of the most like prolific ad runners on the platform, on Amazon's platform.
Have a contract with Amazon. Back when they used to offer contracts, you have to play ball with these guys if you want to do any sort of political commentary, especially political commentary that might be a little bit more on the radical side. But once my contract was over, I stopped running ads. The only revenue stream that comes in is voluntary subscriptions. If they don't want to subscribe, they don't have to. There's no real benefits to subscribing beyond.
Really? Hasan doesn't make any money on his YouTube channels? All of his YouTube channels are demonetized? He only makes money on subs? I didn't know that. That's crazy. Huh. Interesting. Also, voluntary donations. Does a Twitch Prime really count? Isn't that really just money from Amazon? We're really being honest with ourselves.
Just supporting the broadcast. So in that regard, you know, if I stopped live streaming tomorrow, I would not have a revenue funnel. It's just, in this day and age, I think it's the most like sustainable and the most ethical way of doing this.
Also, wait, doesn't he have multiple Patreons for his different podcasts too that are all like six-figure Patreons at least? Plus his merch, didn't he say he was part of a cooperative? Oh, so is he admitting that his merch cooperative doesn't fucking make any money? All of this is so stupid.
You once said, I'd rather be a rich socialist than a broke boy defending capitalism. What do you mean by that?
You're hitting me on my greatest hits here. What I meant by that is that I feel like a lot of people that don't benefit from the current economic organization of society have this false notion that if they defend capitalism, despite not benefiting from it whatsoever, they'll eventually become a millionaire or billionaire one day. And I'd rather be a class trader and try to present an alternative that is more beneficial for and more egalitarian for as many people as possible than to be someone who doesn't benefit from capitalism and still defends it.
King.
At what point does your very expensive home stop being a basic human necessity and something that essentially reinforces the very system that you're critiquing?
His family, okay, worth 9 figures, okay. His family, his family. He bought it for himself and his family. You got to say his family, which, by the way, isn't even necessarily wrong, because his family likes to bounce around between a ton of different exotic vacation homes that they own all throughout the world. So it is partially for his family. But I like how when he says it, the impression you're given is like, oh my God, like his mom maybe wouldn't be on the street, but she probably couldn't have a nice place to live except for Hasan providing her with one. Oh my God, that's so nice.
I don't think the purchases that you make necessarily, I mean, if you're buying a private jet, it's a little different, but I don't think the purchases that you make, as long as you're not using it to engage in capital accumulation, imply...
As long as you're not using it to engage in capital accumulation... Oh, no, never mind. My capitalist brain was 100%. Because wouldn't the accumulation of value in your home be considered that? But technically, to a Marxist, capital is only the stuff that you use to generate revenues or whatever. You have to work it. It's not like a personal home or whatever.
You know, something less ethical than whatever purchase you're making in general. I have a house. The reason why it's so expensive is because it's in West Hollywood. I bought a house for myself and my family.
Yes, I cummed.
And it's a very normal house. It just happens to be in West Hollywood, which is why it's so expensive.
Like, yeah, but it's like saying like, well, the only reason my house is expensive is because it has 20 rooms. Like, obviously, like. How does this address the point? Okay.
Going back to one of your other favorite hits, you also said, don't be mad at me, just tax people like me. Can you explain that?
I mean, that's another classic. As far as the way haters present certain arguments, I always tell them, look, if you hate me, you know, make sure that I pay a larger share in taxes.
It comes across as being quite a passive thing to say for somebody who appears to be, at least on the surface, a radical.
Ooh, true.
Well, I think I have more radical perspectives as well, but this is something within the confines of permissibility, I think, in America. Except sometimes I go back on that. I don't know if that's even possible.
Within the confines of permissibility. I like that one. I should borrow that one. Didn't you call that guy a racial slur? You know, I have a lot of different takes, and I think that's within the confines of permissibility. I like that one. That's a good saying.
I feel like even modest social democracy seems like a lifetime away in America.
If we could talk about the logic of what you do.
Destiny, a 40 millimeter can penetrate limbs. I saw it get lodged into someone's leg. I understand that they can be dangerous, but generally they're chosen to not be dangerous or to not be lethal, right? That's the whole point of choosing them. You can say all this, well, it could hurt you, it could do. Sure, okay, let's do a quick thing. Would you rather be shot from, 100 yards or 200 yards? Would you rather be shot by a rifle or a pistol, or would you rather be shot by a gas can? Like, yeah, could they seriously injure you? For sure. But more likely, you're going to be seriously injured by, like, bullets or... Oh, you motherfucker. Explosives. I know we don't use explosives on crowds. Artillery, good one.
And more about the detractors as well, because you're extremely good at defending the point of view that you come from. You're almost sort of bulletproof in that respect. I'm very curious to see where your journey started and where it led, and why you now do what you do.
Oh, do they?
I want to talk about your recent visit to China, because you appeared on state TV, you live streamed on Tiananmen Square, holding a Chinese flag. Whatever your thoughts are on China, you must have known that was going to be a red rag to a bull for some voices and viewers in the United States. So why did you do it?
Well, I have been fascinated with China for a very long time, and it was actually awesome to be able to go out and see it, because it's something that I've talked about quite a bit. It's no different than coming to Doha as well, where analysis is one thing, but then going out and experiencing is an entirely different thing. And for me, the China experience, the China trip, was almost proof of like all of these things that I have been talking about for so long. This wasn't the hermit kingdom that DPRK style presentation that like Americans are used.
Had his phone seized on the first day, by the way. Couldn't go to Sichuan or whatever. What is it? By the way, because his tour guide said no. By the way.
Used to, and that it was actually growing tremendously at a rapid rate, and was in many ways even more modern than the United States of America is. Like the trajectory.
Oh, somebody in K-Chat said that sometimes cops shoot them right at people. That shit should be. Like I feel like. I don't know how you would charge it, but I feel like you should treat that along the use of force continuum as though somebody's trying to kill somebody. Like if a cop is shooting these things, like if you're using non-lethal things in a way that is like clearly meant to be lethal, like if you're shooting somebody point blank, because I think we have seen videos of cops doing that and shit. Like you shouldn't be shooting those things at people right in front of you. It's basically fucking taking a metal baseball bat up somebody's head. That's fucking insane. Or that one kid who half his face got fucked and his eye got destroyed by the cop shooting it right in his face, right? I feel like you should be charged there, or at the very least the cop should, have to answer the question of, was this a life or death situation? Was your life in danger? Because you're essentially deploying lethal force here. That's wild. Same thing, though, with that one guy with a Preddy, assuming the officer DGG in my chat is correct, that the pepper spray that was used on him, this is for, like, crowds. You're not supposed to just fucking point blank somebody with this. And also, the way he was using it apparently didn't even make sense, because when the chemical spray hits you, it has to react with the air in order to, start to have an effect. And so just spraying it over and over again on somebody, you're defeating the purpose of using it. That once you're layering this up over and over again, it's not even doing what you want it to do. So, I don't know. I feel like officers that do shit like this should be held accountable appropriately.
Trajectory of China, as opposed to the trajectory of the country that I wish would do better.
Like in my mind, as somebody who knows nothing about crowd control, I don't know, maybe there's different training manuals on this, but in my mind, when you're talking about these big crowd control things, you're talking about dispersing crowds that have become violent, and this is like a last resort before people have to start dying, or you're trying to like direct crowds. So if there is a movement that's getting a little bit rowdy and you think if they go to a certain area it's going to be bad, then you like preemptively gas an area off or something like that to kind of like move them along the city into a different part where it's not going to be as catastrophic. But that actually shooting this into crowds of people, this is like a kind of a last resort behavior. This is like it's become unmanageable. So now this is what you have to do, as opposed to taking people, because if they're not violent right now, I don't know why you're ever shooting tear gas into crowds of people. I don't understand. Because you're escalating the situation. Now everybody's going to be more pissed off. You're making everybody more upset. They're not technically doing anything illegal, I guess, unless the cops have told them to leave because they have a good reason to believe that it's going to get unlawful or unruly or whatever.
But as far as all the criticisms goes, I mean, it doesn't matter if I go to Tiananmen Square or not. People are always going to be critical because I went to China.
Is there a fine line, though, between cutting through Western preconceptions of China, American preconceptions of China, and potentially platforming a controversial nation state?
I don't think you can platform a controversial nation state.
Really? Would you say the same thing about Israel?
I mean, I guess there's like differences. I wouldn't go to Israel, for example, but I don't consider China to be in.
I wouldn't go to Israel, but I would go to Qatar. I would go to China, but not Israel. Okay.
In the same wavelength of.
Why not go to Israel just to talk to the Arabs that live in Israel? You know, there's like 2 million Arab Palestinians that live in Israel. Why not go there?
Or same magnitude of cruelty that Israel is.
Do you think the Uyghurs, the Tibetans, the Taiwanese would agree with that?
Uh-oh.
Well, I don't think the Taiwanese are even remotely comparable to what has happened to the Gazans. And yeah, that's actually one area that I'm very critical of China on. And
it's not what he was asking.
I feel as though if Benjamin Netanyahu's treatment of the Palestinians
also, he's not critical of China. I don't think he even thinks that it's happening. And he justified the whole or the Tibetan shit on Ethan's podcast, but okay.
Resembled the Xinjiang policies, which were horrifying, dragnets, mass surveillance.
Oh, also, I saw that tweet about Hasan saying he's going to board a flotilla to Cuba, and a lot of you guys were saying there's no shot that he does that. He absolutely will do that. Flotillas are like the best. They're like the best fucking pointless PR shit that you can ever do. That's probably the most Turkish thing he's ever done, because flotillas love to go from Turkey to Israel to stir some shit up. What you do is you call yourself a humanitarian aid flotilla. Half your ships, or all of them, are empty. You might have supplies in a single fucking boat. And then all of you are like media trained and press ready. You're live streaming and broadcasting. You know that what you're doing is probably illegal or is going to get intercepted. It's basically like the grown-up version of when Lauren Southern was with Identity Europa or whatever, in the little tugboat with the little flare things or whatever. That's basically, it's just like the grown-up version of that. Like, oh, we're going to get in a flotilla that doesn't have any real humanitarian supplies in it, knowing we're never going to reach this place because we know that we're violating some naval blockade or some naval thing. And then once we get intercepted, we can complain that it's a human rights violation, repeat ad infinitum. And then if you're really, really lucky, someone on your boat will get shot by some kind of Navy, U.S. Coast Guard or something like that, and you have a huge media attention for you.
And camps.
Although, to be fair, I don't actually know what restrictions there are right now in terms of sailing a thing to Cuba. I don't actually know if that even is illegal or if there is anything like that is blockaded or whatever. I have no idea.
As well, like re-education camps in general. If this was the Israeli policy over the Palestinians, who then would have full-blown citizenship in the aftermath of this process, I think the Western world would consider Benjamin Netanyahu to be the most peaceful leader of all time. So I think that while the Chinese system, the Chinese control over Xinjiang, or the apprehension methods
in China, it doesn't matter who they make citizens or not. One, because you've got a fuck ton of normal Chinese people, and two, because it's a single party rule. It's an authoritarian state. It doesn't matter if you incorporate how many people. What do you mean? Israel's a democracy. The demographic issue is the whole reason why they don't want to incorporate the Palestinians proper into their demographics, because they don't want to deal with them as voters, which is not good, by the way.
Used were completely unethical and against my principles, something that I've criticized over and over again. In comparison to Israel's genocide, it's still not even on the same wavelength.
Talking about detractors, you famously debated the right-wing activist Charlie Kirk, assassinated, of course, in September last year. I mean, love him or loathe him, he believed, apparently, in what he was saying. What do you make of him, and what has come from his killing in terms of MAGA America, Trump's United States?
I mean, I'm not shy about saying that I loathe the guy. I've known him for many, many years, and yeah, I was supposed to debate him 2 weeks before his assassination, 2 weeks after his assassination. I think initially I was very worried that the government was going to use Charlie Kirk's assassination as a point of martyrdom, and then and engage in heavy-handed repression. And they
I mean, wait, maybe he's about to say they did. They did do that.
Signaled that they were going to do that, but. I feel as though the tide shift has been so dramatic.
Like heavy-handed, like what would be a heavy-handed thing that the government could do because of the Charlie Kirk stuff? Maybe like getting the FCC guy to fucking deplatform a late-night talk show host because they didn't like his talking points, or, among any other number of crazy things that this administration has done on the back of the Charlie Kirk assassination. What do you mean?
And now, I mean, Charlie Kirk memes have exploded on the internet. The forced reverence that the administration expected, or the forced reverence that they wanted everyone to engage in, completely backfired on them. It was shocking even for someone like myself, seeing how much people openly now not only criticize Charlie Kirk but even make fun of his legacy. As far as the administration, like where they take it from here. That was a failure because of their heavy-handed approach, I think. They went after Jimmy Kimmel
Oh, there you go. He remembers.
And demanded censorship by using one of the federal regulatory agencies. And that, I think, was a bridge too far for many liberals and even many independents as well, where they were like, no, this is unacceptable. And they had to...
God, I hate his framing. That was a bridge too far for many liberals. Bro, we've been a bridge too far for all the liberals. He's trying to do this thing. He's like, underlying all of his rhetoric is the idea that liberals and conservatives are the same. And it's like, well, liberals will stand for a lot of horrible shit that Trump does, including all the ICE stuff. But like, Kimmel was too far for liberals. I think the issue is even some conservatives were blinking a little bit on this, right? I think Ted Cruz, I think, among other conservatives, were kind of like, I don't know about this one. I don't know about this one, Chief.
They had to respond to that public backlash and that public pressure and backed away from it. I think the other story with Charlie Kirk's assassination is also the misinformation that flies around. Candace Owens very quickly came out. The administration had one goal, I think. They wanted to turn this into an anti-fascist action to punish the entirety of the political left. They obviously failed to do so, but Candace Owens, also being one of the most significant right-wing figures in the country, very quickly shifted the blame over to Israel. And that was another very interesting moment from my perspective. I could not comprehend how many people would get on board with that very quickly. To me, that means that like Israel's approval.
You couldn't comprehend how many people get on board with crazy conspiracies about Jews and Israel? That was really unbelievable to you? Okay.
Levels were so low that people were willing to, without much evidence, immediately assume that Israel had a hand in the assassination of Charlie Kirk.
Without much evidence, so there was some?
That made it virtually impossible for Trump and the administration to continue claiming that this was like an anti-fascist action.
Hasan, let me ask.
What, they still call it anti-fascist. What do you mean? The majority of Republican people still think it was anti-fascist because of the bullet and everything else. I don't think the narrative on that has changed at all. But okay.
To you about this because you were recently suspended from Twitch. Seventh ban, is that right?
Yes.
What happened?
Here's something that I'm really confused about. What the fuck is even happening right now in American media? I've been disconnected because I fucking hate American media. I just hate what's happening in this country right now. There was the Super Bowl shit was the last like huge event. There was a big shooting in Canada where I think like 26 people were injured and like 9 were killed. And I'm pretty sure, I think it came out right that the shooter was trans. I'm surprised they haven't picked up on that at all in the United States. Or have they and I've just missed it? Because I thought that was going to like explode on American media for this.
Hello. Brendan, have you found any pop triggers that you don't need?
No, I haven't been killing the guys though. These dudes on the ground, I haven't been shooting any, so. If you go in the tunnels underneath the map, you might find a bunch of them rolling around. Fucking loser. Just kidding. He's not.
So last year, the ADL,
the Anti-Defamation League.
The Anti-Defamation League, or the Apartheid Defense League, as I like to call them, created a rule specifically around me and maybe a couple other content creators on the platform. They forced Twitch to make Zionist, a political ideology that I find to be very racist and very violent, into a protected category by claiming that Zionist was a substitute.
Okay, so like this is so annoying because there are, by the way, there are definitely Jews that do this. Netanyahu's done this, where they try to make like every criticism of Israel is like anti-Semitic when that's kind of bullshit. And it's fair to call those people out, although a lot of the people that say Zionist really do mean it in an anti-Semitic way, which makes it more complicated. But then you've got another layer on top that makes all of this even more fucking annoying, in that any fucking time ever you criticize anybody who is even remotely Arab, so that means that they're Persian or Turkish too. They lump all of this together. They'll call you Islamophobic. Like, how many times has Hasan said that criticism of Frogan is Islamophobic? Like, why? Frogan's not even really fucking Muslim, bro. She's a fucking crazy American white woman who happens to have this, you know, temporary identity because it suits her politically. But, like, nobody's viewing her as, like, some fucking devout Muslim. Or any kind of Muslim. Like,
new term for Jewish. Although this is not the case, of course. You could still criticize Zionism, but you were not allowed to say Zionist, insert whatever, you know, animal name as an example. I, of course, did do that when I was talking about the anti-ICE and anti-Israel domestic terror watch list that the Department of Homeland Security had created. And I said, anyone who's defending this is an ultra-Zionist pig. And that was reason enough for Twitch to ban me for 7 days.
I mean, Twitch would argue that it's got some pretty clear hate speech policies. Is there any part of you that recognizes that this revolutionary optimism, I think you've called it previously, might sound a bit like a kind of form of incitement for particularly young, impressionable viewers?
Revolutionary optimism? No, I don't think that's incitement of violence of any kind. But if you're asking me about terms of service in terms of hate speech, I do think that terms of service should exist. And Twitch is pretty rigorous when it comes to applying its terms of service, unlike many other social media platforms. Having said that, there are instances where that can be abused, and I do think that the Zionist as a protected identity thing is totally ridiculous.
What does it mean to not be on Twitch anymore? Do you intend to fight your case? I mean, you're losing quite an important platform.
No, I'm back already. So I got banned. So I got banned for 7 days, and then I knocked it down to 3. I did like a course.
Oh my God!
A course?
To
like a driving ban course?
Yeah, pretty much.
Right. What does that mean, briefly?
Just you go through and figure out what is determined as hate speech and what's not.
And that's it. You pass the test, you're back on.
Yeah.
You recently praised the, quote, propaganda of the deed following all that political violence we've seen in the United States. You seem to be flirting with the idea that the very system is so broken that it needs to be dismantled.
Why don't I get that course?
No, I make a point to make sure that I don't believe in adventurism. So as far as talking about like Luigi Mangioni's actions and whatnot, I'm more invested in understanding why this is not as considered as controversial in a country like America, where something like that normally would immediately cause people to go, this is unacceptable. But as far as like praising the propaganda of the deed, I don't agree with.
But if your kind of form of education leads to those kind of deeds, are you prepared to take responsibility for it, or will you sit behind your screen and watch the numbers go up?
I think as far as I do want to stress that that's the only I do want to stress that I am not in favor of decentralized violence. I think militancy and organizing.
What was it? I'm not in favor of decentralized violence. What a weird fucking thing to say. Okay. King, based.
I think it's something entirely different, but I don't believe in like random acts of violence.
Does being a revolutionary always require people to be provocateurs?
Jesus.
Yes and no, I guess. I don't intend to provoke. I intend to wake people up to the realities that they're experiencing, because I think a lot of people experience, they go through the daily struggles of everyday existence, and they don't necessarily understand who's responsible for this or what the system's design looks like, and they end up showcasing their anger towards marginalized identities, marginalized groups in general. They assume that it's undocumented migrants or trans people that are responsible for why
two groups that Hasan cares so much about.
Why their expectations of what their lives are supposed to look like did not actually meet reality, when in fact I think it's the systems design that they're struggling, and I try to refocus people's efforts into a more productive avenue that way. But as far as revolutionary action goes, I mean, I'm in favor of changing the system, but I don't shy away.
The average home value, I'm just curious, I looked this up because this is what the AI answer says, so I don't know, maybe it's not true, but this says the average home value in West Hollywood, California is approximately $989,000 to $1.2 million, with median sale prices often exceeding $1.2 million as of early 2026. So Hasan's house was like 2 to 3 times more expensive than the median. I like how he says it's just an average WeHo home, but okay.
Away from working with active political parties, I'm not, like, I want the most peaceful methods to be exhausted. To the best of my ability.
A couple of final questions. Where do you see the likes of you and I in about 10 years' time? The broadcast journalist and the so-called newsfluencer. Are we essentially on the same page, or do we diverge in a path where we will never meet?
Well, I always bring this up, but I think...
Yeah, and that house is probably worth even more now, true?
I mean, news media is a profoundly important part of what I do. If it wasn't for real journalism, I have no idea what's going on.
Oh, now he's on his dick suck arc. I appreciate this. Good one.
Right? Like I don't have journalists going out in the conflict zone. So it's a symbiotic relationship. So I want professional journalism and mainstream news to continue doing good journalism. I see that, especially in a more holistic way. I think it's very important for there to be credible mainstream outlets, which is why I respect Al Jazeera so much, and even offer credit where credit is due to the likes of the New York Times and CNN and numerous other outlets as well.
Oh yeah.
I wouldn't exist without mainstream news. I would not be able to do what I'm doing without it. Otherwise, I would not be informed about what's going on.
You come across as being incredibly informed, and we're in a kind of circular kind of relationship where we depend on you and you depend on us. But very, very lastly, I want to ask you what you think, from your privileged position, what's in store in Trump's America?
Oof, a lot more pain and destruction, I think. We're getting to a dangerous place of instability in America. I think that the liberal international order is collapsing in ways that aren't dissimilar to how liberalism collapsed 100 years ago. And I think Trump has recognized that, and he's transforming American politics in a fascist direction. And I really worry about what that future looks like, especially considering that now there's no communist counterbalance, really. I mean, China is nowhere
Counterbalance,
as
the
militant as the
communist
USSR was historically, especially against combating fascism. And also America has nuclear arms and 800 military bases around the planet. So what American fascism looks like, I don't think we've ever encountered. And I don't know what that's going to look like at all. So I want to avoid that reality, and I want to organize to the best of my ability to ensure that that reality doesn't come to fruition.
What's he referring to that happened 100 years ago? Nazis and shit.
All right, Hasan Piker, thanks for talking to Al Jazeera.
Of course.
Every time liberalism fails, or every time there's been bad shit and happening in the world, it's because liberalism has failed. Every time. World War I, World War II, all of it was liberalism failing. Every time. Okay, find me another fucking video, okay? That's like 1.5 inches? What? Oh, maybe. Never mind. What episode of The Pit are you on? I think I finished episode 7 or 8. I started watching them on my way back. I was so close to losing it. First of all, on my drive up, there were 2 accidents. Again, it took me an hour again to get out of Miami Beach. And then on my way back, there were like 3 accidents. I don't know what the fuck it is. I think that if you get into a car accident during high traffic situations, I think you should be deprived medical care. I don't think they should help you because you're just making the world worse for everybody. And I don't know if it was like carrying my shit around and my leg was sore, having to fucking do the clutch, gear, 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 clutch, gear. I was like, oh my God. Every time I open my Google Maps, the road ahead of me is all red with like plus 42 next to a car written on it. I'm like, why? Why get into a crash? Why do that? Or at least like, why not like veer off the road and go crash that way? Why would you crash and be in the middle of the fucking freeway? There was a bad one too. I don't even know how this was so cleaned up, but there was like a car behind another, like behind a van. That car behind, that was like, fuck. I don't even know how you hit something this fast on the interstate unless you're going like 150 and the other guy's doing like 60 or 70. It's just, I was about to start tweeting, but then I had a bunch of other tweets and I didn't want to hijack my own Twitter to complain about this shit. I need to get the fuck out of here though. I'm trying to remember, LA's traffic was always just bad, but I don't know if it was ever bad because of accidents. Man, just when accidents are what is causing traffic to be bad, I just get triggered in a very special way. I don't know. Do I even care about this thing right now? I need money. They make modern cars that will drive for you in bad traffic. Yeah, but I don't know if the types of people getting in car accidents are the types of people that are buying fucking Teslas or whatever electronic car bullshit. What if you just died? What if you just died, please? Rate the Pit so far? I think it's a Godstiny show. I know he's not trying to kill my thing that I've like... Oh no, he's looting a thing. He's... Like, I've done like 90% of the work. Is he really gonna just... Does it not suffer from the quip style of speaking a little bit? Does it I mean, it has that as part of its writing. I don't think it's necessarily bad writing. That's just a very particular style of writing. But I mean, like the House had that, right? Where every single fucking patient was like a philosopher, you know, 170 IQ. Like even the children patients, you know, like, I just want my mother to be happy. And even if that means sacrificing my life to cancer, it would make me a better... Like even the children in that show were fucking quippy. Every single person. Oh, remember the were they like 10 years old? The girl and the boy, and the girl had like the bruise on her face when House was doing... I don't know if that was the same episode where he was doing like parent-teacher day or whatever. Like every single... That's just the way that show was. That's not necessarily a bad show. It's just a particular style of writing. You know what show also looks interesting, but I've only seen clips of it? Is, you motherfucker. fuck, what's it called? It's like a guy is like a line chef. He's like that famous actor who perpetually looks like he's 19, but I'm pretty sure he's like 30. Oh, The Bear, that one. That looks good. Trump and economy.
So for over a year now, I think a lot of people who are pretty informed on how economies work have felt like it's pretty weird that the other shoe has not dropped yet. We've got a government that feels kind of unpredictable. We've got tariffs, like big new tariffs. Also, those tariffs themselves feel very unpredictable. You got people who had previously had their student loans deferred, no longer having them deferred. You got people who used to have government jobs, no longer having those government jobs. But as a person who is really involved in the running of a couple of small organizations, this unpredictability piece of this is like a really big deal. It's like big cost for a business, especially if you're running a small business where you can't just like call up a lobbyist and get an exemption. You can't shift production between 3 different continents. You can't finance a sudden inventory pileup because you're worried that the rules are going to change next Tuesday. And so there's a big mystery here because markets are up. Jobs are not collapsing. They're like, okay. Spending seems okay. People are still buying stuff. Online holiday spending in 2025, higher than ever. Now, the labor market has cooled. You can find plenty of stories about slowing hiring and rising uncertainty. But broadly, the story as it stands is this thing is still chugging along a lot more than people seem to have expected.
Now, nobody likes to talk about it. And I'm pretty sure it's considered like a persona non grata talking point. I don't know if talking points could be persona non grata, but that one thing that was brought up a long time ago, the vibes-based economy, maybe it kind of was a little bit before, that the economy wasn't as bad as everybody was freaking the fuck out over. And now when you've got conservatives who dramatically flip their opinion on the state of the economy based on who's in office, they'll just chug along even if things are getting a little bit worse or they're not getting as good as they should be. As long as they think it's good, they're willing to endure a lot more than they would be otherwise.
So why? And I've heard a few explanations that I think are good explanations. I also have a hypothesis that I want to run by everybody that I think is terrifying. But we'll talk about the...
I don't know what his hypothesis is going to be, but there's also I think there's also two big things at play right now that are kind of keeping us afloat. Is one, I'm vibing this out completely, by the way. One is that I still don't think the world has fully bought into the idea that America is serious right now, that everybody's still kind of waiting for America to take a step back from the edge. So nobody's making permanent changes right now. They're just trying to endure the certain environment until they're trying to endure this certain environment until it changes, basically goes back to before. Is one thing I vibed from nothing. And then the, fuck, I had a second one and I just lost it because I heard this guy scream at me. You motherfucker. Oh, the second one is that the whole AI crypto shit, I shouldn't say crypto stuff, I shouldn't lump those together. But the AI stuff, those companies might just be generating so much fucking revenue. And the market capitalization of these things, so how much they impact the stock market, might just be so fucking high that is able to mask other problems in the economy. Although this could be remedied by looking at different indexes or looking at non-tech related companies too to see what their growth looks like, which I'm sure he will in this video, right?
Explanations I've heard that I think are pretty good. One, the AI investment boom. There's a lot of real money going into the real economy to build data centers and buy chips and power infrastructure and do the software and everything downstream of all of that. A bunch of different economic analysis has shown that this has been a big contributor to the macro situation in the US. It accounted for a lot of the private demand growth in the first half of 2025. Latter half of 2025? Probably. We don't have that data yet. And there's also an interesting fiscal tailwind right now, and that is in tax policy. What we are doing is we are taxing people less. We've lowered taxes.
Oh, that too. A whole bunch of government stimulus, because we haven't done anything about our deficits. We're still doing a lot of that deficit spending well, yeah.
Especially on the wealthy, and we're financing that through deficit spending. And that can keep demand high when things would otherwise slow down. And that's especially true if a lot of the economy is propped up by wealthy households. The Wall Street Journal reported that the top 10% of earners drive about half of consumer spending because people with assets are doing quite well. If you had money in the stock market, you have a lot more money than you used to have. And you could just sell some stocks and go on vacation, or sell some stocks and buy a new car. They have money to spend. So if stock prices are doing well, they stay high, then high earners are able to keep spending, and you get an economy that looks kind of fine in aggregate when a lot of small businesses and a lot of normal people are not feeling fine. And all of that feels like it makes sense to me, and it tells a fairly coherent story. I have an addition that I'd like to propose, and this is dangerous because I'm just a guy. And there's a weaker version of this hypothesis that I feel like is pretty true, and I've actually heard it from other places. And there's a stronger version that, if it is true, I feel like is bad, really bad. So I'm going to tell you my little guess here, and then I'm going to talk to an actual economist about whether I'm totally off the mark. And spoiler, if I discover that there's nothing to this, I will not release it as I have just recorded it. But I think that you should stick around for that conversation to see what holes we poke in my ideas here. So let's start with a weaker claim that this is just a kind of political physics at work. The markets, we're going to talk about the markets a lot here, but these are human beings, and they are broadly, we're going to talk about this a little later, but broadly fairly sympathetic to Donald Trump. They think that he's going to be good for them. And I think in part because they understand the incentives here. And Trump, his popularity
Sorry, wait. He said something really weird as soon as I walked away. I could be wrong. I would be surprised if the top 10% of households that spend money on things probably are just like cash rich. Or maybe there's a different way of spending that I'm just not aware of. I seriously thought they're like, hey, let's go on a vacation. Let's sell some of our stocks to do it. I'm going to liquidate part of my asset holdings or whatever in order to, I'm going to sell off some of my 401k or some other investment I have in order to take a vacation. That sounds like not a thing that those people would do. I could be wrong on that, but that would be pretty weird to me. I would feel personally a little sick if I was selling off part of my portfolio to go on vacation. Although maybe, I guess if you're worth a fuck ton, maybe you don't feel that same way, or if you're later on in life, I guess. I don't know.
That's success.
But,
is very much tied to the market not collapsing, to there not being an economic downturn. And so the markets, these people who are in charge of like buying and selling and sort of set a lot of the prices, they know that Trump will back off if the markets freak out. They know Trump won't do something. It would be very self-destructive for him to make decisions that would actually result in an economic downturn. And not just that, but that he's going to make a lot of decisions to make that not happen in whatever way he can, because a lot of his power, this is always true of a president, but specifically for Donald Trump, who has a lot of his credibility built on him being a good businessman for whatever that's worth. I think that the markets understand that President Trump understands that if the economy turns down, it will be very bad for the amount of power that he has. He likes having power. He will do whatever he can to have the economy not have a downturn. And that includes exercising a lot of power that a normal president might not exercise, including putting a lot of pressure on the Fed, like doing a lot of things that he should not technically have the ability to do. Basically, if the president's power depends on the economy looking good, and if markets are one of the loudest and fastest feedback mechanisms we have, then investors can rationally believe that there's a limit to how much pain the White House will tolerate. And that comes straight down to self-interest. So the market can price in a kind of back off button. And we saw this early on. Last April, after the administration's tariff day that they had, Trump announced a 90-day pause on a lot of the tariffs, and then the S&P 500 had its biggest daily gain since 2008. So that's the basic weaker claim, that Donald Trump will do whatever he can to keep the economy humming along. And also, he has proven to be good at exercising a lot more power than previous presidents, and so the markets believe that this very powerful force will continue to support it. I've heard a lot of people say that there's something happening in the direction of Donald Trump needs the economy to hold on to his power, but there is another portion of that cycle, which he has a lot of power, and so he knows he has to keep the economy going, so he will keep the economy going. And the markets understand that there's a lot of power in the administration, and that it will work very hard to keep the economy going. It's a circular thing. Do you see how it goes both ways? Trump needs the economy needs Trump. And so one of the things that might be keeping the economy humming along is knowing that there is a strong man who has a great deal of power and is not afraid to use it, and he will do whatever it takes to keep the economy humming along. And you see this in like little details, like Trump has exemptions on electronics like smartphones and computers and semiconductors, and that's like a lot of the big companies that are responsible for a lot of the increase in the market, like in the S&P 500. So he's working hard to protect the things that at least make it look like the economy is still good. So even if tariffs and chaos and firing a bunch of government employees is bad for like the real economy, investors feel like there's a line that the administration won't cross, and also that there's lots of stuff that they will do to keep supporting the economy, because the Trump administration isn't going to threaten its own political power by letting the economy collapse. And that's a big buoy for the market. It lowers the perceived risk. If you feel like there's a guy who has a whole lot of power in charge of the country, he's not going to let that downturn happen, and he will bully whoever he needs to, fire whoever he needs to, even investigate whoever he needs to, do a little bit of power that he shouldn't be wielding here and there to keep it going for his whole 4 years. I think it's a model of incentives, especially for the kinds of people who are involved in finance, who tend to be more sort of aligned politically with Donald Trump and who do a lot of incentives-based thinking. I think that this makes sense, that like this structure would result in the short term in a more stable economy than you would otherwise expect. But that is not the strong claim that I want to make. The riskier claim that I'd like to make here is far more worrying. But first, this video is brought to you by my newsletter. It's called We're Here. You get it once a week, every Friday. It comes in and it delivers to you some of the coolest things that I found from the internet, some introductory thoughts either from me or from my brother John, and also often a little blog post from the amazing people at Our World in Data. It is a human-curated thing that's delivered to your email inbox for you to look at or not once a week. Check it out. There's a link in the description. It doesn't cost any money, and it doesn't even have any advertising.
Wow.
I make negative dollars from this thing, but I do want people to sign up for it because I think that it's good. All right, thank you. So here's the strong claim. It's not Trump will work really hard to avoid a crash, and not even Trump will, do some underhanded things to exercise his power in ways that might not technically be aligned with how the country's supposed to work according to the Constitution to keep that from happening. There are some really big companies that are responsible for a lot of the economy, and they would like to be exposed to less risk and have more opportunity for cheaper. And what if the biggest companies can do relatively cheap things to signal loyalty and proximity to Trump, and in return they get access to the levers of power, and that access reduces their risk and increases their upside. This is not the back off button. There's a couple words for this. You could call this a patronage system. You could call it also an oligarchy.
Bribery.
And look, is this quid pro quo? Is this like definitely like written down and like say, I'm bribing you now, and then he says, yes, thank you for your bribe. Here's your new more lax regulation. Like, it doesn't really have to be that. It's a pattern. There's a lot of more discretionary policy. There's a lot of stuff that the administration can do or not do, enforce or not enforce, just depending on vibes. And this administration has no qualms about doing that more or less, from my perspective, depending on whether or not it seems like this organization of people has some amount of loyalty to Donald Trump. And in a world like that, very quickly, the best business strategy becomes do that. Not like make a better product, not do a bunch of innovation, not compete on price, but just give a little bit of money to the administration. All you gotta do is stay in favor. And for these big companies, this is why a lot of people I hear them say, like, I don't understand why none of these rich guys have any balls. Like, why aren't they pushing back against this? It's because if they don't stay in favor, their stock prices will go down, and they see their job as what their job is, which is to make the price go up for their investors. They work for their investors. They don't work for capitalism. They don't work for democracy. They don't work for ideology. They don't work for their customers. They work for the share price. And that can be fine, as long as making better products is the way you make more money. I don't think that this is like a paranoid fantasy. There are facts here. So Trump's 2025 inauguration fundraising was crazy. Almost $250 million, which was corporations. It was ultra wealthy donors. Crypto firms alone gave around $18 million to the inauguration. But the inauguration just happens one time. So how else can you absorb some signals that people might be supportive of you and loyal to you? Maybe you want to build a $300 million ballroom, but you don't want to use taxpayer dollars for it. So you have it be private donation fund. And maybe this isn't even public. You have major corporations. You have wealthy individuals. You have major tech guys giving money to build this thing. Why are they doing that? Why, out of the goodness of their hearts, are they funding the construction of a ballroom? Do they think like, yeah, no, we need a ballroom? Is that what they're thinking? Now, I understand that some people might be thinking right now, okay, yeah, Hank, rich people and corporations give to political things in order to get sway. Welcome to America? But the case I'm making isn't that like people could spend money to get political capital. The case I'm making is very, very large companies that are responsible for like the majority of the S&P 500 are definitely like engaging in this. Like they were sitting behind Donald Trump at the inauguration. They bought those seats. They're doing high visibility and high dollar shows of loyalty and support. But they're super cheap compared to like competing on price, right? Or like doing a bit of R&D to create a new product. And they know that the Trump administration has set up an environment where policy outcomes are super uncertain and discretionary and also very consequential. They can have a huge impact on your business, but whether or not something actually gets enforced, I don't know. Who decides that? I'm not sure. It's not clear. Sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't, and it's different for different companies. How do we decide? How do we decide? If you're a huge company that is an incumbent, you live in that world, all you need is like a shared understanding of the incentives here. You need to believe that the president rewards loyalty and punishes disloyalty and wants power. And like once you like believe all of those things, you can relatively cheaply demonstrate your loyalty. And then suddenly we have a lot of really big companies that are in a world that has more opportunities and less risk and fewer threats. And
that's why they demonetized me on YouTube, by the way.
Is an economy drifting toward an oligarchy. I, somewhat famously among certain groups of people, am not as critical of capitalism as you might expect. But I also understand that capitalists have no ideological allegiance to capitalism. That's not what they're doing. They're trying to make more money. A good capitalist will happily become an oligarch. Because if the other choice is having your competitor become the oligarch, then that's a terrible decision. Why would you do that? And you can drift toward this oligarchy without like some kind of like big suitcase full of cash situation. It's not so much about the money. It's about the consolidation of power. It's about very large companies knowing that
donating to president's inauguration is something that's standard. I'm just really now, yes, Trump's was fucked for sure, but curious if that was also like that for other presidents. I don't know. Is it normal that you donate to the president's inauguration? I feel like the craziest thing was the fucking picture of all the wealthiest men in the world who all donated $1 million all sitting there. My intuition tells me that if it had happened in the past, you would have heard about it, that somebody would have brought that point up, but maybe not, because Trumples don't even give a fuck about it.
They can't cross the president, and they have to demonstrate through some kind of donation that they are not going to be one of the ones who is critical of the president. And the world of finance matters specifically here, I think. So we have seen Open Secrets did some good reporting on this, described the securities and investment industry as a top donor category to Trump-aligned interests and PACs and stuff. Financial advisors also donated way more to Trump than to Biden/Harris. If you're in finances and you think that the game, this is not everybody, but if you think the game is political power protects asset prices, then supporting political power, that just becomes risk management. And this is a phenomenon that in the short term can keep markets buoyed while the underlying economy is being damaged, because the big companies that are responsible for all of these assets that are still flying high, and then the people who have assets and then the people who have ownership of those assets can sell some stock and go on a big vacation and stay in a 5-star hotel. All that money is still getting spent. All that economy is still happening. But part of the reason is that these big companies know that they can purchase stability and opportunity and freedom from risk. And not just that, but the people in the finance industry understand that this is a thing that's happening. And when you compare that to the antagonistic stance that a lot of the Biden administration has.
So I think one thing that you have to be careful of is, so we have a theory, we have a hypothesis, I guess you're saying, whatever. We have a hypothesis that if Trump does the things that he's doing, that it should result in massive damage for the economy. And these hypotheses are like fairly historically tested. Like you tend to know that when markets are less stable, that capital investment goes down, or that when you're increasing the cost of goods, like with tariffs, that people will buy less. We know these things are generally true, but as time goes on and you start to drift further and further away from your hypothesis describing reality, you have to bootstrap it with even more reasons. I think you should be willing to go back and re-examine, like, well, was the initial prediction wrong? Maybe these things don't matter as much as we think they would. Unfortunately, there's a couple things that make this harder to do. Like in a reasonable environment, it would be pretty easy to step back from things because it would start to require a lot of crazy explanations for like, well, how could this possibly still be? But unfortunately, we're in like very uncharted territory with the current Hold on one second. With the current administration. Hold on.
had toward big businesses. To some people, maybe this just seems like a business-friendly environment. And so this is the stronger claim that I'm making here, that there's actually a stabilizing force on the economy through this mechanism, that big incumbents, who are the majority of the economy and thus the majority of the asset prices and thus the majority of the money of the wealthy, who are spending the majority of the money, believe that they can get protection. As long as they can demonstrate loyalty to Donald Trump, that reduces the downside risk for the big firms. Big firms dominate the index stays strong, assets keep higher earner spending, high-end spending props up like the average spending, and then the average spending props up all of everybody's earnings, and then the earnings prop up the index. So tariffs can be a drag, the unpredictability can be a drag, everything can suck for small businesses, everything can suck for the lower and middle class, but the market can still float up there because the market is betting that the winners will be protected and the losers will be everybody else. But the winners will be protected, and they're the ones that take up so much of the economy anyway. Now, I assume that we all understand that if we're pretty far over on the spectrum, the short-term stability in the market does not mean like long-term good outcomes. Like the cost of this, we've seen it in lots of different countries, is brutal. Any economy where impress the dictator beats build a better product is not a competitive economy. It's not one that generates a lot of good stuff. It stops serving consumers. It becomes purely extractive. It becomes all about rent seeking. It's all about how much can we pull out of people. And this is not unusual. It's just that we don't usually see it in such fine-grained detail, where we don't see that like early on, it's not bad for the economy for stuff like this to happen. But it takes a while before you see the effect of the innovation slowing. It takes a while before you see the effect of upstarts not being able to break in. It takes a while before you see the effects of all this capital and talent getting wasted on the influence part of everything and not on the actual creation of products. But eventually, that place becomes not dynamic. It becomes less resilient, less capable of real growth. And there's like a reason why corruption is bad. Like it's not just like a morality thing. It's bad for a society. Like there's a bunch of reasons. I just get over and over again, I start to like get the sense that we've forgotten that there's reasons why we don't like things. It's just like, oh, well, yeah, we like say that this is bad, but when I like my guy's doing it, it's kind of okay. There's reasons why the bad things are bad. They hurt systems. They stop things from working. Corruption is the biggest kind of theft. It is the largest scale, society scale theft. And it is all about giving the powerful power to extract rent from the unpowerful, which is what everybody says is like the terrible thing about capitalism. And like, yeah, but that's not a symptom of a well-functioning market. In a good market, you move to somebody who's less extractive. That's why there are certain things like housing and healthcare that maybe shouldn't be purely market driven. And so I think this is all like worth taking seriously. And I'm certainly not the first person to identify that like we're sliding into an oligarchy, but the fact that it might help explain this weird phenomenon where we have a bunch of new frictions in the economy, but the economy is still doing well. I haven't seen anybody say that. And like maybe I'm wrong. Like I don't follow things that close. But even the weak version, like the back off button is already enough to distort a bunch of incentives here. The strong version, however far we are along that spectrum, the like loyalty for protection version, that's how you build a country where the market is not a competition to serve people, it is a competition to serve power and use that to suck resources out of people. And I think a lot of people do really think that that's like a normal thing to do. Like as long as you can do it, do it. That's what capitalism is. No, it's not. That's oligarchy. And you can do that in a communist system, you can do it in a capitalist system. You can give a lot of people the power to control the levers and then extract everything out of people. And what you find in that system is that it sucks. I was going to say that it sucks all the energy and competitiveness out of economy, but like let's just end it there. It sucks. Places where this happens do not have a bunch of people thriving in the middle class. But now I really have gotten to the point where I feel like I'm talking out of my ass. So I'd like to talk to an economist, somebody who thinks a lot about the weird and messy time that we are in America, and who I enjoy hearing from and learning from. So I'm going to publish this video as I just recorded it. I'm going to edit it up. I'm going to send it to Kyla Scanlon, and then hopefully we're going to cut, and I will be having a conversation. Everybody, theoretically, this is Kyla Scanlon.
I think you have essentially covered what a lot of the major financial outlets have been talking about. Even in the first week of February, Ken Griffin of Citadel came out and essentially said what you were saying, where he's like, I'm really worried that the economy is bending a knee to the Trump family. They've really enriched themselves. So the fact that somebody of that stature and somebody of that level of power is coming out and saying like, hey, it seems like there's some level of oligarchy going on, you're correct in your statement. Yeah.
I feel like the weak case is pretty clear. The Trump administration desperately wants and needs the economy, or at least the stock market, to keep chugging along. The highest spenders and highest earners and highest wealth individuals will continue to spend, and that will keep some portion of the economy chugging along. I don't have confidence that Trump could really make the stock market go up, but I have confidence that he could make it go down because I've seen him do it.
He does, yeah.
And then when that happens, he's like, never mind, actually, 3 points of stock market loss is actually way too much for me. Let's keep the thing going. So I think that that's very clear. But the part where maybe the economy is benefiting, or like the biggest companies in the economy, like is there some portion of the finance industry that's like, these companies will be fine because like they have made it clear that they will bend the knee and that Trump will reward them for that?
I mean, I think some of them are struggling. So the Trump administration took a large percentage of Intel. Intel stock went up on the news and has since suffered quite a bit. And so I don't think it's like a guarantee that if you do a big deal with Trump that you're going to be free sailing. Yeah. But he has made it very much an easy environment for the AI companies to succeed. And that's such a big percentage of the economy, like 40% of GDP growth last year, 75% of S&P 500's earnings. So like the stock market is like driving so much stock market growth. And so I think there is this assumption if you're a technology company and you get along well with the Trump administration, you'll be free from some regulation. And that's why you saw all of the big tech leaders at his inauguration. It's why Jeff Bezos did the Melania movie for millions and millions of dollars and then turned around and fired 30% of Washington Post staff. There's this idea that, if you get in the correct way in your tech company, you'll be relatively safe. And I think that's the only people that they can really promise it to. Like there's been a big push in the Trump administration for manufacturing, but manufacturing has enormously suffered underneath Trump because of the tariffs. So it's really only tech, and that's kind of okay in their eyes because tech is such a big part of the economy.
Is it mostly a big part of the stock market? or is it a big part of the economy?
It's a big part of GDP growth. So it's a big part of the economy in what the economy is based.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And it's where a lot of financing is going. So data center bonds are a huge part of the bond market currently, and AI companies are taking out a ton of debt, which is usually a little bit of a red flag. So it's a big part of the economy in terms of growth, but not a big part of the economy in terms of jobs. So like most jobs being added are in healthcare and social services, which do not get the same sort of investment that AI is getting. Yeah.
In part because like all of that's relatively low margin in the long term because of the people, because of the jobs. If you have to pay a bunch of people to do the work, then that costs money, and as people's salaries go up, that costs more money, and that's all stuff that we want, but it cuts into the margin. Yes. Whereas the tech industry traditionally, even before AI, has been like tremendously like world-shakingly different in terms of the number of jobs created per the number of dollars created. So like far fewer jobs per number of dollars made. But then AI is like a whole nother level of that, where it's like, well, maybe the software can do all of the jobs, which is maybe not entirely untrue. I think there's actually a lot of jobs that will be done by AI.
Yeah, that's the big scare in the market right now. Anthropic, which is one of the top AI labs, released this like legal AI assistant, and the stock market had a pretty big sell-off across the software companies because everyone was like, oh my gosh, if they can make this legal assistant, they can make any software obsolete, which I think is a little bit overstated. Right. But what was also interesting about that is all of the major asset managers sold off because private equity and private credit have so much exposure to software, and that really complicates where the stock market has to go, and software maintaining its a very high valuation.
Yeah. So all these software as a service companies that you never hear about, you have no idea they exist. Private equity is very exposed to them, and they are very big.
And so are regular investors. There's something called business development companies that private credit has rolled up to allow mom and pop investors to get some exposure to junk bonds. And that's complicated. Yeah. It's getting like really spooky.
I have this sense, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there's a lot of money out there.
There's a lot of money.
So like Apple has a lot of money. Warren Buffett is sitting on a big pile of cash. I think that there's a lot of high net worth folks who have money, and they're not sure what to invest it in. And for a second there, it was like, everybody got to get into the AI. But now you're saying AI companies are taking on debt. And that to me indicates that they can't sell their just shares for super expensive and raise that money that way.
Their valuations are pretty inflated. So they're turned into the debt market.
They've already gotten about as high as it's gone about as far as it can go, as they say.
It's pretty high, yeah.
The question I keep noodling on, and so every time something, I'm like anchored to it right now. And so every time like something comes along, I'm like, does this explain my question? But the question is just like, why is the economy
sorry, I missed a little bit of this. Sometimes I have a few friends that come over and they like to hang out a little bit. So I don't know what I missed here. Sorry.
High net worth folks who have money, and they're not sure what to invest it in. And for a second there, it was like, everybody got to get into the AI. But now you're saying AI companies are taking on debt. And that to me indicates that they can't sell their just shares for super expensive and raise that money that way.
Their valuations are pretty inflated. So they're turned into the debt market.
They've already gotten about as high as it's gone about as far as it can go, as they say.
It's pretty high, yeah.
The question I keep noodling on, and so every time something, I'm like anchored to it right now. And so every time like something comes along, I'm like, does this explain my question? But the question is just like, why is the economy still going hot? It seems like things are fine. And I don't just mean the stock market. Like I went to the mall this weekend, and the mall was full of people shopping and going to the arcade. Like the arcade where my son loves to go it was sweaty in there. There was so many people running around. I was like, I gotta.
Did they call you like usual or no? No. This was I don't know if this was intentional or not, but usually my number is flagged by the police department, but they gave the wrong apartment number this time. I don't know if that was intentional to get around the flagging, but good one.
Leave. I feel like I'm in here. It's very hard to tell when you're on the internet because, of course, the internet story is always going to be the scariest story. Nobody's going to talk about how they're doing well. That's not going to be, fun to say.
Yes.
For one, because like there's always people who are not doing well.
Sure.
And so like we're somewhat dependent on government data. We're somewhat dependent on lots of analysts doing analyst stuff to figure out if things are going okay. Does it seem like things are going okay?
I mean, I've been studying this phenomenon of the sort of the disconnect between consumer sentiment, so how people are saying what they feel, and then broad economic data for a long time. Because people will say that they're feeling really bad, but they'll go out and spend. Like retail spending is up. Consumer credit, people are using their credit cards actively. They're spending money on all sorts of things. We're seeing them spend a lot more on, like food, groceries, rent versus maybe clothes. Right now, the economy is pretty substantially weakening. But the United States has a lot of access to credit, and so people have a lot of access to credit. And so I think the theory that a lot of people will float with...
Wait, I said vibes-based economy. Did he introduce... Is this... is it Kyla Scranton? Am I making that up? Is her name Kyla? Like Kyla? Or Kayla Scranton? This is the woman who we had her on Bridges once. She's the one who wrote that first article, I think, that coined that term vibes-based economy. Oh, Scanlon? Oh, Scranton is the office city. Just kidding.
The strength in the economy is that people are able to use their credit cards, able to use products like Klarna, which allow you to pay in installments.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I was in the middle of a point. I got interrupted. The if you're going to try to explain everything with, you know, here's a new thing we're bootstrapping, here's a new rule, this is why, this is why, this is why. I need really heavy data to show that it's like a huge departure from the norm. So if you're going to say that companies are engaged in some kind of like rent-seeking behavior in order to stave off the inevitable economic collapse because of all the crazy stuff that's happening, I think you need to be able to like show that. Like you have to be able to show that like more than ever companies are engaged in some kind of behavior. I don't even know what behavior you'd point to, but you have to show that that's happening in order to explain, because you're departing more and more from your original hypothesis. And if you don't change it at all, you start to look a little bit conspiracy brained, you know?
But then also, a lot of the spending and a lot of the growth outside of the anecdotes is from higher income consumers. So 10% of Americans, the top 10% wealthiest, drive, you know, over half of consumer spending. And so that is also keeping the economy afloat and ties into your asset price theory, where, you know, everybody's assets have exploded in value over the past couple of years. If you own a home, if you own tech stocks, so people are wealthy because of that. And so they're able to go and spend money in that way. And so that does provide a floor to the economy right now. Does that answer?
What the cops think you did? That I was killing my mother right now. Based. Well, not based. I would never do that.
Question?
Oh, it gives me great context. Yes. I don't think there's an answer to it, but I guess
I don't think so either.
It does feel like the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was tying absolutely everything to the price of these of the stock market. You know, this is like, let's have everybody's retirements be based on that. Let's have the entire economy be based on 10% of wealthy people feeling like they can spend whatever on whatever. Does that feel like the Achilles heel right now? Like if asset prices drop substantially, people suddenly get conservative and that becomes a reinforcing loop?
I think that's a worry. Yeah, I think that's a big worry, is that if the stock market does drop, you know, a lot of people's wealth doesn't come from labor income anymore. It comes from owning stocks or owning a home. The Federal Reserve has a pretty good wealth breakdown on their website, and they show this, like for the top 10%, most of their wealth is coming from things that they own or businesses that they own, not from like money that they're making through a job. The whole like wealth effect is important to maintaining the economy, which comes from these high asset prices. And so if the stock market does go down or experience a correction, there is a concern that yes, people would stop spending and it would cause a pretty big contraction in the economy. There's something called a K-shaped economy. So in some parts of the economy, this is already happening. So for lower income consumers, they're having a harder time, you know, living paycheck to paycheck. Their wages have not grown nearly as much as higher income consumers. They don't own the same assets. They're not as likely to own a house because we don't build enough housing. They're already kind of in a recession type environment, whereas wealthier consumers are more insulated because of the high asset prices.
What do I know? But it just seemed to be like there's like a lot of weaknesses. Like there's a lot of weak points. It doesn't seem rational to me. Like the sort of like shape of the economy doesn't, in a way that like economies, I know that the economists say this, they're like supposed to be rational. Like they're supposed to be this
yes,
system, this like series of like people acting in their self-interests and making decisions that make sense. But like, I mean, if you just like pick micro examples, it's very easy to say that there are not like super irrational things out there. And this has been the case for, I don't know when this sort of meme stock phenomenon began, but it seemed like for quite a while where we're just sort of like, yeah, the thing that you have to understand about Tesla is that it's not about Tesla. It's about everyone thinking the price of Tesla is going to go up because they think that people are going to buy more Tesla. Not about the value, not about the like delivered, not really about Optimus or whatever. It's about like the vibes around the stock. And there's like, if that can be that way for one of the most valuable companies in the stock market, like we're not talking about GameStop here, there's a huge amount of value tied up in there. And it does seem very Ponzi to me. It seems like, well, you have to buy it because it's going to go up. And it's going to go up because you have to buy it.
I mean, you could argue the same thing for crypto. And this idea, have you heard of reflexivity? Have you heard of that word?
No.
So that's a concept that George Soros coined in the latter half of the 1900s. And it was essentially that idea that people would believe something is going to happen. So they'd go and buy up whatever they thought was going to happen. So stock going up. And then that would cause the stock price to go up. So it's essentially that idea. It's the bubble mentality, you know? And so it's a very human.
It's the bubble mentality, but Tesla has been this way for a long time.
Bubbles can last a long time.
Oh, I don't like that.
I mean, they can last as long as
this is so
people have
frustrating
money.
because I want to buy at the top, Kyla.
You want to buy at the
top?
top?
Oh, no, I want to sell at the top. I want to do the opposite.
I'm making no money.
Because I want to know when the bubble's going to pop so that I can buy puts or options or whatever the thing is that you make money when things go down.
Well, then you get into Keynes, right? Markets can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent. That's an important John
one.
Maynard
I should
Keynes.
tattoo that on the inside of my eyelids, yeah.
It's a good one, yeah. So that's the other funny thing is like economists and market analysts have been talking about these ideas forever, but because there is so much access, which is both a good and bad thing, like you can buy whatever you want on Robinhood, there's much more exposure to bubbles and everybody can participate in one. You know, crypto has proven itself, I think, to be a bubble in some aspects of the products that it offers, like Fartcoin. And yeah,
Did you say Fartcoin?
Oh, you haven't heard of Fartcoin? Are you really? Oh no! I'm sorry.
I find myself watching too many videos about astrophysics, I guess.
That's much better for your brain. Yeah, Fartcoin was this. It was actually a top performing asset last year.
Is it continued to be this year, or has
no? The big sell off. The bubble popped. Yeah,
the fart bubble popped.
Exactly. But there's a lot of stuff like that, like these things that'll happen, and then everybody will pile into a Trump coin. It's kind of another example too. Even though that ended up being a way for people to skirt the legal system and to pay him bribes to get out of jail, like Justin Sun did, using Trump coin as a way to.
You should have. I muted my mic before. I went because I figured they're knocking cards. Usually that's a cop knock. Imagine if somebody would have donated on the board. Like, check under the bed. Bro, don't ever do that.
I mean, that also, I have a theory that we forgot why corruption is bad because we were too focused on the fact that corruption is bad. And I think that this is true of a lot of different things in society where we talk about why, like, thing bad, but we talked about it being bad for so long that we lost touch with the
never mind. Oh shit, I should get over there. The cop comes into the room and the fucking Saw music starts playing.
Why behind it? And corruption is a good example of this, where we're kind of just like, well, yeah, you know, like ultimately we kind of hired a guy who's, you know, a wheeler and a dealer, and like corruption is going to be like
what's under the bed? My mom's corpse, apparently.
Like corruption's bad for like a reason, which is that it is stealing from everyone else.
And other countries.
Corruption is like stealing from everyone.
Did they say anything about how nice your guns were? One of the cops did. And the other 9 just stood there awkwardly.
Who's not involved in the corruption. And that of course like leads to an eventual like corrosion of trust in all institutions, which of course has been going on for a while.
Well, if you think about the thing that's backing the US dollar, it's full faith and credit in the American institution. And a big part of that, is
I really don't want that to be the Achilles heel.
Oh, sorry,
you know,
the dollar?
No, the American institution, which of course it is, but I want it to be a well-shielded Achilles heel, you know, that isn't weak.
It should be. It was designed to not be weak.
It seemed impervious until 10 years ago.
I know. Yeah, I mean, if you
now it feels like there's arrows from every direction headed toward this little boy, and maybe the shields are not as strong as we thought they were.
Yeah, I mean, they're auxiliary institutions, is what James Madison called it. Like this idea that we would have all of these protection points, the Supreme Court, Congress, as a way to prevent a strongman from coming in. And like the founders knew something like this would happen one day. They knew that there would be a personality that could take over through the power of whatever he has, and they designed it so that there would be institutions that would hopefully stop it. But you know, objectively, the institutions seem to be quite complacent. Now they can just sort of throw insults rather than addressing like real questions that people have about why things are functioning the way that they do, and it creates a very toxic media environment where there is incentive to lie. Everything is run by reality TV show.
This is a big thing that I'm trying to make a long video about, and it just keeps getting out of hand. The size of the video, it may turn into several videos, which is annoying because then they get put on the back burner, and it's important. But that is something I actually feel qualified to talk on, is sort of like the structure of how information flows, because that's my job, you know? Like, how do I get attention on ideas? How do I get attention on fish evolution? Or, you know, the weird economy of the Trump era. I want to, let's get back on a little more of your area of expertise to finish up. If you could give me like the 3 leading reasons, because of course we'll never get to the bottom of exactly what's going on. Maybe in hindsight we'll have some idea, but 3 leading reasons why the economy appears to be chugging along just fine right now. What would you call those 3 leading reasons?
I mean, I think there's the wealth effect. So you have asset prices that have skyrocketed. So a lot of people have really benefited from the stock market.
Oh, geez. Somebody linked this Open Secrets thing. After winning his first presidential election in 2016, Donald Trump, I thought this was the current one, Donald Trump raised a record $107 million for his inauguration, more than double the previous record set by Barack Obama in 2009. So then I guess it is normal that they raise money for it. But after winning a second term, Trump's inaugural committee took fundraising to an entirely new level. His 2025 inauguration brought in $251.4 million. God damn. So Barack Obama is in third place with like 50 million, and then Trump 1 is in second place with 107 million, and then Trump 2 is in first place with 251 million. God.
Boom. And then I think that also ties into housing. So boomers have an extraordinary amount of wealth, and they're willing.
Which is why Donald Trump is out here being like, we can't make the house prices go down. People worked hard, like not for these people who aren't working.
Oh, somebody said Biden at 62 million. Sorry.
Working very hard, so that people who don't work very hard can have a house.
Yeah,
and it's like, you don't think who's not working very hard right now, buddy?
Oh my gosh! And then who are they going to sell it to? Because people won't be able to afford that.
Aquaman.
Yeah. So I think that's a big part of it. And then the AI trade, I think, is providing like a floor to the market and therefore a floor to the economy, data center spending, services spending. So that's creating a lot of economic power. And then I think the third thing is. Maybe a part of it is that there is that availability of credit. So people have access to things like Klarna. They're able to take out things on their credit cards.
There's just new credit tools.
There's a lot of, and so some people are getting a little overextended, and we're starting to see that in the data, especially with auto loans. But yeah, so those are the 3 things kind of propping things up right now. Yeah.
Those don't seem like particularly solid pillars.
No, I mean, ideally people would be able to, buy a house with their labor income, and then ideally the whole 401k business wouldn't be just entirely tied up into, like, people would have a different way to retire, so it's not inflating the stock market in the way that it is now, and we'd have investment diversification outside of AI. I mean, I just worry about how many resources we're funneling toward this one thing, and we don't even know if we'll need data centers. Like, it might evolve to the point where things are so efficient that they don't need these huge structures.
Things could get more, like, that tends to be how it goes, but these big companies have the money to spend. Like, Google's like, oh, finally, something to spend money.
You have to overcome that hurdle
we have lots
first,
of that.
though, right?
If we can win just by having money, that would be huge for us, because we can have money and we know how to build data centers. And then the startups, I think we'll have a hard time competing in that environment. But the OpenAIs and the Anthropics. But I think also, like, the more money that they spend, the more valuable their companies are. Like the more it's all about money, the more it's all about money.
Yeah, but there's some drama going on because of the circular financing. So OpenAI and Nvidia aren't getting along so well right now. Yeah.
Yeah, and suddenly Oracle's like, I didn't promise anything.
That's so funny. My shirt answers the question you're asking type of thing. Why would you tweet that? Like, what a red flag. They're like, oh, everything's fine.
Did that come out of nowhere? Were they not asking?
No, they essentially like started this whole domino effect, and they were like, everything's fine, and then everyone was like, surely nothing's fine if Oracle was like saying that.
But it sounds like you wouldn't put like everybody feels like Donald Trump will keep the economy rolling, whatever the cost, as one of the pillars here.
He'll keep the stock market rolling, whatever the cost, yeah. And that's not always reliant on the economy doing well.
Sure, but do you think that is a thing that some people in the world of finance are relying on? Donald Trump being like a ruthless, will keep the stock market up no matter what kind of.
Yes, absolutely. And I think they're getting sick of it, like the taco stuff. Trump always chickens out, so he'll like announce these major tariffs, the stock market will sell off. I don't know how much more power he'll have in that stance. And
you think he might have burned a lot of that ability,
especially internationally. You know, if the EU doesn't want to buy treasuries, we're in trouble. They own 40% of U.S. treasuries. So
and that's treasuries being a way that we fund our national debt.
Yes, the main way that we fund all of the spending that the U.S. does. So if the U.S. can't fund all the spending, you know, the government
or has to pay a higher interest rate to fund it.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And then that's not good either. So I think everyone's like, this doesn't really make sense. And I think Ken Griffin from Citadel is the canary in the coal mine there.
This is dumb for me to ask at the end here, but are the tax breaks a part of this? Like, are rich people just able to spend more because they have more because of the tax breaks?
Yeah, and they're pretty successful at bending the tax law to their will. Yeah. But yes, fewer taxes.
Well, yeah, I mean, what I'll say is, like, as a high earner who also has high net worth, like the earnings, they get taxed a lot, and like that's fine. But like, what I see is the money that comes from my investments doesn't get taxed a lot, and so like, I don't know. I've asked seemingly progressive billionaires about this, and I'm like, why do I pay so much like lower taxes on money I don't work for? And they're like the risk, and I'm like, also labor is a risk. What the f are you talking about? Like choosing what company to work for is a risk. If companies go out of business, sometimes they treat you terribly. Like you invest a lot in them, and then they can just lay you off. Like it's like risk everywhere, not just for you, rich man. Yeah. There's lots of risk, and so like labor is also risk. I don't understand. Like the idea that capital gains should be taxed at a lower rate. I like maybe there's like some argument there that I don't get, but man, like, am I being incentivized to stop creating value and instead just sit there and look at Robinhood all day?
Yes, you are. There was a good article in FT that said that we have become a place of shareholder rights over civic rights. And I think that the taxation system encapsulates that well.
Well, that makes me mad.
Yeah, I mean, it's like by design. And so it's not great. It doesn't incentivize the right things, especially right now with all the financial nihilism and people not trusting that getting a job will do them any good. So they just go and sports gamble and do prediction markets and stuff. Yeah.
Well, I didn't mean to get into that.
I mean, I do think capital gains rates should be higher, but I mean, it's the difference between the risk is like if you've worked for money and you've earned it, you've got that money and that's it, right? You're not risking it. Whereas theoretically, any capital investment could go to zero, depending on how you're insured against it, is the risk part they're talking about, obviously, right? And then, it's not like if you put your money in an investment account, it's doing nothing. Like because he said I'm incentivized to do nothing instead of create something. Well, technically, you're giving your money to other people to create things, right? I mean, it's like, but
it's kind of like every lane you go down, there's some sad note these days. But I have a lot of hope. I'm hopeful.
Okay.
Like,
well, then give me with that. Where do you feel your hope comes from?
I've been traveling the country for the past year with my book, and I meet people in all these cities, and I meet people who are working really hard on these problems that we're talking about, like how do you make a better world? And a lot of that does happen at the local level right now. Like we focus a lot on the federal problems in the news because they are so big, but what people are doing in local communities is like very important and very impressive, and you just have to believe in those people right now, and that they'll pull us through.
What I'll say to people, and like I know I'm talking from a place of just a huge amount of privilege here, but I do think that like, and maybe this message is more for the rich people than like, so if you have more money than average, hear this. Like, I think that it is much more interesting to be out here making value than out here like moving dollars around. So if there's like ways for you to be in the mix, be in the mix. And also if there's ways for your money to be in the mix, instead of just sitting in your accounts, if it's like out there doing good, try and figure out how to get it out there doing good.
Did Destiny watch the technology connections based rant yet? I don't understand how people are still linking this like daily. Yes, this is like 2 weeks old. We watched this. Yes. We did.
Pick a number, figure out where that is, and then get the rest of it out there doing good. Because it's doing nothing sitting in your accounts. It's doing nothing propping up the stock market that's already overvalued. Just get it out. And like there's so much good that can be done out there. And like figure that out in your local community, internationally, nationally, wherever.
There's a lot of lessons to learn from the robber barons, like Carnegie.
There's a lot of lessons to learn from the robber barons.
Like libraries, and they spent their money in a much different way because they knew, like Henry Ford with all his problems, he knew that if he had happy workers, he would have a happy company and he'd make a more successful product. Obviously, he had his own complications, but like they just thought about the relationship between employer, employee, and rich person and community a lot differently. And they saw the connections and ties and what they could do to build that up. Yeah, to have better business in the end. This makes all of us better off.
Yeah, no, and I just feel like there's a lot of people who have like enough money to start a little business doing something interesting that would create value and that would make them a little bit of money, but they can make so much more money investing in a REIT or in private equity, and so that's what they do. They let somebody like outsource all of the work of running a company, the stress of running a company, and also the ethics of running a company to somebody who will be ruthless and work hard, and they will end up making more money. But boy,
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. There was a Supreme Court case in 1919, Henry Ford actually, versus the Dodge brothers, and it ruled that a company's first interest should be to shareholders rather than to customers and to the community. And so I think that's where everything went wrong. And so, it's not, I'm not going to get on a soapbox about it, but it is important to think beyond the shareholder sometimes.
There are many stakeholders that are not shareholders. Kyla, you are an economist, you're a writer, you do great work making sense of markets and vibes and power in our economy, and I appreciate all the work that you do on all of the social medias. And you can check out her book, it's called In This Economy, and that you can learn more about what you're doing and follow her on all the places. Thank you for spending.
Wow.
Of agnostic sense.
Wait, do you think the term fact check is loaded?
100%.
What do political commentators Adam Mockler and Natalie Winters say now?
Firing Line with Margaret Hoover is made possible in part by Robert Granieri, Vanessa and Henry Cornell, the Fairweather Foundation, the Tepper Foundation, Peter and Mary Calico.
What's going on with like PBS? Is the whole network shutting down or just parts of it because of the U.S. government thing? I don't even know how much their funding was public. I feel like there was a big announcement recently, but maybe it was just some programs on PBS getting shut down.
Cliff and Laurel Asness, and by the following.
Natalie Winters, Adam Mockler, welcome to Firing Line here at Hofstra University in front of a student audience. It's wonderful to welcome you both here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
You are both online political phenomenon. Adam, you host the Adam Mockler Show on YouTube, which has a subscribership of more than 1.8 million subscribers.
God
Natalie,
damn.
You are the co-host of Steve Bannon's War Room.
Oh,
at the ripe age of 24, and you, at the ripe age of 23, have garnered almost unprecedented mainstream media attention and digital media attention. This is a time, as you guys know, of really intense disruption in media, and each of you, in your massive followings, have developed a degree of trust with your audience at a time when trust in media has plummeted. Why do your audiences, I'm going to go to both of you, why do they trust you? Natalie, go first.
Well, I think it's not just that we cover issues that Americans actually care about in a way that's truly factual, but we cover the issues that I think for so long legacy media has just routinely ignored. I think you can sort of see the convergence of that with what President Trump talked about in 2016, which was immigration, trade deals, and the idea that our government should actually work to represent us and not be importing a sort of class of foreign workers, depressing our wages, and just, I think, destroying what it means to be an American. It's the idea that Americans are not allowed to care about certain issues, or they're, demeaned as nativist, xenophobic, racist, every ister ad hominem attack in the book. And I think War Room, I think sort of alternative, at least conservative media, actually says, no, it's okay to care about wanting to be an American and not having your government replace you with a bunch of foreigners.
Adam, what do you do that has developed trust with your viewers?
I think in this new age of media, where mainstream media is losing viewership and people are migrating to digital media, people are looking for authenticity. The Democratic Party, which I oftentimes represent in my videos, has built up a reputation of being a few things: risk-averse and a little bit finger-waggy in people's faces, always trying to tell people what to say or what not to say, right? So as somebody in this Democratic sphere, I try to bring an authentic view. People don't always want to see me in suits on TV like I am now. Sometimes I'm just in my bedroom telling it how it is, that's saying what the story of the day is, and that is authentic to people.
And that's
really
helped you build trust?
I think the authenticity has helped you build trust.
The T-shirt helps you build trust.
In a way, absolutely. It feels like we come at an angle that mainstream media oftentimes fails to come at.
The concern older people have, I will speak for older people, right? No, but the concern, right, is that in the old world, there were journalistic standards at mainstream media organizations attempting to discern what the truth is and correct the record if you got it wrong. And this notion, which may seem antiquated, of journalistic standards. So in the context of the digital media spaces where both of you exist, what kind of standards do you adhere to as you go about gathering information and disseminating it?
Most of my work is directly quoting, whether it's government grants. A lot of my early research had to do with Chinese Communist Party infiltration. I would spend hours in deleted web pages going to the translated web page versions and just quoting the Chinese Communist Party, as is these foreign influence groups, the Americans that they were meeting with. I've always just done primary raw source reporting and have carried through. It's indisputable.
So how do you characterize the standards that you hold yourself to?
I just report the truth. And I think that all this focus on standards, I think, is sort of this bureaucratic kind of, not gotcha, but where it's all about imposing this sort of idea that in order for a story to be accurate, it has to be fact-checked, it has to be peer-reviewed, it has to have this whole kind of editorial
process. It doesn't have to be fact-checked? I mean, you just said you spend a lot of time finding facts.
They're just facts. The fact that this notion of a fact-check, I think we use very loaded terms that connote this sort of agnostic sense.
Wait, do you think the term fact-check is loaded?
100%.
Tell me why.
It was a construct that was created by this sort of anti-disinformation industry, which
it shouldn't be. We should be against disinformation. We should be. Tell me about the disinformation industry.
I think definitions matter here.
Yeah.
Because I think all of our definitions of disinformation would differ. Fact-checking is great. We should check facts.
That shouldn't be the case, by the way. We should all be able to agree on how to ascertain what's true and what's not true, and have some epistemic guidelines that we all agree on are good for determining what is. That's an insane statement there, but whatever. Okay.
But I think it's important to understand who is actually doing, because I think there's a weaponization of these terms, that there's this implied neutrality, that the people who are checking your facts are people who have no bias.
But that's
not true.
I think you make a very fair point. So then, to quote Daniel Patrick Moynihan, a former Democratic senator, who said, everybody is entitled to their own opinions, but not their own facts. I mean, is it the case then that we might actually agree on a set of facts, consistent facts, that we can then debate?
But the point of fact checks, they have really only ever been weaponized to pull content down. Fact checks have only ever been weaponized to silence content that doesn't fit mainstream narrative.
Okay, Adam.
I mean, Yeah, but that's because you would assume that somebody putting out something is going to be truthful, unless it gets fact-checked, in which case it wouldn't be. That's like saying cops are only ever used to arrest people, but they're never used to, teach kids math? I mean, they're cops, so they're there for, right? What do you think is the point?
Journalistic standards do you apply to yourself as you internalize information and disseminate it to your audience?
To get to the heart of the question, I think that there is a difference in mainstream media and digital media in that authenticity sometimes means there aren't as many hoops that you have to jump through. So when I'm making a video, I and my team, we are the ones that fact check this video. We're the ones that make sure everything I am reporting is at least coming from something that is backed up in reality. So if I am reporting
in a mainstream media source,
exactly,
or
so
one or two or three.
So I rely on mainstream media a lot for this. So if the Washington Post is on the ground reporting something, I think that my standard is I'll use the Washington Post reporting. I'm not going to use a random person on the ground on Twitter who is reporting this. So
you'll take a accredited journalist with a mainstream publication over a YouTuber who's on the ground, and an independent journalist on the ground in Minneapolis.
We trust both, but the independent journalist on the ground in Minneapolis needs to be backed up by some sort of credible information or source.
What is a world without fact-checking?
I think that we are rapidly moving into a media environment where AI is going to be so prevalent on the internet, it's going to be hard to fact-check some of this in real time. I'm sure everyone's family members has fallen for some sort of AI video, and you're the one that has to tell your mom or your grandma, hey, that cat didn't actually save that other cat out of the lake or whatever, right? So I think a media, that one didn't happen. I think the media environment without fact-checking just turns into throwing mud at the wall and everybody trying to push a completely dishonest narrative with no agreed upon not universal.
Please, I'm about ready to come. She's going to be like, I think a world without fact-checking is great. The American consumer can watch what they want and they can decide what they think is true or not true, as it always was supposed to be.
Agreed upon truth that we can all at least arrive at. Like, we are now in a post-factual reality where we can't even agree on fundamental things like, did this person win this election? Is COVID real? Is this real? So it just really bothers me when, I don't know, people are in high positions of power and spreading lies and aren't getting fact-checked.
Okay, I want to go to how you both define yourselves. Adam, you're not you don't consider yourself a journalist. I would characterize you tell me, I mean, you're a content creator who offers political commentary and analysis. Is that fair?
Yep, I like to debate.
Maybe she's going to run through all these questions with the girl next.
I don't say I'm like an unbiased person on the ground reporting the truth. I generally say I am just out here to push my beliefs.
Natalie, you define yourself as a journalist. You have a White House press pass, as we all know. But you have said your assignment, right, your beat in a way, is, quote, covering the opposition forces to Donald Trump. And you have said that we are the enforcers of the MAGA agenda. So,
Jesus.
Take on your critics who would say, that's just communications for the administration.
Yep,
that's not journalism.
it is.
How do you define yourself?
I think anybody who would say that we are sycophants or, regime puppets for President Trump, I think has probably never watched about 5 minutes of War Room.
Do you see what we say about Israel?
That's what you said, though. That was your definition of yourself.
No, we for MAGA. And that's important because I think
MAGA
what you're
is not
saying is
Trump.
MAGA be diluted in a way. It's not being true to what President Trump ran on, whether you see that with mass deportations and immigration, you see it with the trade deals, you see it with the foreign policy. So we hold them accountable to what actually putting America first is. And I think first and foremost, where I view War Room's role in the White House media landscape. And secondly, I also think, sort of related, I think the mass protest movements that you have seen against the Trump administration, we liken it to a color revolution framework. I think a lot of people who were involved in sort of the regime change stuff in foreign countries, particularly in Eastern Europe, all the sort of democracy scholars have really sort of...
When they say color revolution, she means that like it's all fake bullshit that's being propped up by sources and everything. They've alleged this for a decade and they have no proof of any of this at all ever, and they never will. Or I mean, I shouldn't say that. They could. Maybe at some point they will actually show some proof of it, but don't hold your breath.
Use those tactics here at home. It's why they depict President Trump as an autocrat. It's why they depict him in those sort of coded terms so they can use those similar tactics. And we have always covered, I think, that the left-wing protest movement really followed the funding, tried to understand what they're animated by ideologically, what their drivers are. I think that's a unique thing about War Room. So we're not running cover for the administration by covering that. It's what our audience is just actually interested in.
I want to do just a little bit more of just the mechanics of how you both do what you do. I mean, she's actually going for sort of mobilization of individuals. What is that your goal? I sense your goal is
It's twofold. I think I like to message for the Democratic Party, not directly, but I want to push it in a direction that I want it to see. The Democratic Party, and young people in this room can likely relate, has been too risk-averse and too finger-waggy over and over. We have candidates that are running that won't even go on mainstream podcasts because they're a little bit too nervous to misstep. Kamala Harris only had 107 days to run her campaign, but she was not getting in these spaces that she needed to get in. Trump would go on anyone's podcast as long as they had just a tiny little microphone to stick in his face. Literally, he would go on any podcast. What I want to do is return to a Democratic Party that's not so risk-averse, that is more authentic, and that can speak to the average American without always being so condescending.
Okay, so but on the policy, where is that going to come down? Because there's a real tug of war.
No, Americans don't give a fuck about policy. Who cares?
Between the AOC, Bernie Sanders, Zohran Mamdani wing of the party, and the sort of mainstream liberal Democrats, more moderate Democrats. Like, do Democrats need to take clear stances like abolishing ICE, taxing the rich, implementing universal health care, cutting ties with Israel? Like, is that the direction the party needs to go? I mean, those are clear stances, but that's a very different vision than the moderate Democratic stances.
Well, I'm moderate, but I also think that populism can fit into that, talking to the average person from a moderate point of view. So I don't want to tax all billionaires out of existence. I'm not Bernie Sanders, but I want to reform the tax code in such a way that the 150 loopholes for billionaires to be able to make a bunch of money are maybe more rational. Maybe we tone down the loopholes so the richest of the rich aren't getting these massive tax breaks while the working class people are getting cuts to their Medicaid or their SNAP. And it's not like we want to tax billionaires even more. It's not like I want to increase the wealth tax. No, I just want to make sure that it's a fair and equitable system.
You alluded to a wedge on the right that I want to ask you about, because if you see your role as holding the Trump administration accountable for the America First agenda, in November, President Trump had a really public falling out with Marjorie Taylor Greene, who criticized President Trump over his handling of the Epstein files, foreign interventions, failing to extend the Affordable Care Act subsidies. And ultimately she said, you know, I am America first, not MAGA. She feels, perhaps like you do or not, she feels that the Trump administration has abandoned some of its America first policies. Is she right?
I think it's too soon to tell. And I think that to answer that question definitively now is to imply that politics is stagnant and it can't be in flux. Like, there are issues where...
But is she onto something? I mean, it does sound like you agree that
and
there's
for people who watch War Room, but I think where people maybe misunderstand, where maybe I would humbly and respectfully push back with what Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying, is that I think to just capitulate and say it's over is to give up when the Trump administration has shown that they are receptive to the sort of grassroots, their base, calling them out. And I think that people who just want to throw in the towel, that's not the American fighting spirit. I don't think that that's what composes the people who make up the War Room audience. They're willing to make phone calls. They're willing to get involved.
I think when you say you're putting America first, what I'm actually hearing is you're trying to pull the Republican Party in a more radical direction. Putting America first is allowing...
You can call it radical. She would call it populist.
Well, populist, but not populist. Well, the majority of Americans think that legal immigration is something that is okay because it benefits the United States.
She can talk first off. Why is the lady red cover for her?
In a fundamentally different way than they view everybody else. You guys view immigrants as net drains on the society, but that is not borne out. You can look at anybody as a drain on the society. I take up housing, you take up electricity, you take up space on the road. So when you say that immigrants take up housing and immigrants take up electricity, it's sort of a myopic view, and they take up jobs because they create. Immigrants also create a lot for this country. I mean, immigrants are net taxpayers. For a personal anecdote, my grandpa moved here from Syria in the late 90s, and you could argue, yeah, he was taking up space. Why was this person from Syria taking up space in the United States? We shouldn't have let him here. But my grandpa has built a business that now employs dozens of people that feeds dozens of families. I grew up in Indiana, where my community was full of a lot of Muslims who became heart doctors or surgeons or very productive members of society. 30% of working physicians in this country are immigrants, are people who are coming here to help Americans. That is putting America first. How are physicians that are immigrants helping Americans not putting America first?
Hold on, don't take that. I'm going to ask a question. What I would like you to respond to is there a positive story about immigrants who aspire to live the American dream?
What is the name of this program? Okay. The firing line.
That are living in a way that isn't undermining the American experience for Americans already here. Is that, I mean, do you subscribe to that notion in any way? Or do you reject it?
Of course there are some, but the way that you're seeing legal immigration happen now is just historically, empirically extremely different from the waves that you saw before. You used to have an on period of people coming in and an off period, and the people who would come in would assimilate, much like your grandfather. They would actually, I think, enjoy American culture because you had to. Now, I think you have this sort of weird, perverse left-wing ideology where we're told that assimilation is racist, and I don't think that that works. And I think when you talk about the immigration issue, it's like we have to do this performative, to some extent, ritual where we have to praise immigrants as like the greatest thing that has ever happened in this country. I'm not bashing or negging all immigrants, but I also think we can appreciate the contributions that Americans have made to this country. The American people have been abused by the legal immigration system. And sure, are there some immigrants that are good? Yes, but there's also a lot of problems with the immigration system. It's a problem of scale. It's too many people.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to show you guys
Are some of
William
them?
F. Buckley Jr.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of him? Yeah. Okay, so William F. Buckley Jr. hosted a program called Firing Line for 33 years. In 1979, he actually tackled the question of immigration. How many people should be allowed in and from where? Listen to what he says in this exchange with the first Latino commissioner of the Immigration and Naturalization Service. Take a look.
Well, is the question purely a numerical question, or is it one that has also to do with ethnic balance?
I think it has to do with the whole vision of the country.
If my memory is correct, it was only about 13 or 14 years ago that we officially renounced the preference that had previously been written into the law for two groups. Number one, Western Europeans. Number two, residents of this hemisphere. Is that correct?
Yeah, we've gradually moved toward a non-racial type policy.
Okay, so he's saying we have gradually in our immigration policy moved towards a non-racial policy. There is a sense that sort of implicitly we are moving towards a racial policy for immigration under this administration. The criticism is that the Trump administration wants a whiter America. Is that fair?
I think that's absolutely absurd.
What was the point of that quote from this guy? What was this, like 50 years ago? What was the point of that? Why, of all the things we could have pulled from? Also, that Buckley guy, I think his career kind of nosedived when he got so fucking triggered by a lefty dude, Vidal, in a debate that he called him a fucking queer on fucking TV, right? Rip.
The idea of populism, economic nationalism, is maximizing the value of what it means to be an American citizen. I don't care what race you are. I don't care what your religion is. I don't care what your ethnicity is. I don't care about any of that. I care that first and foremost, you are an American.
Not that that would discredit any of the ideas he has. I think slurs are based, okay? But that, because somebody said they pulled that quote because it happened on this show. There's nothing more recent or relevant, or I don't know. It just seems like a weird, like, here's a quote from like 60 years ago, even if it was from the same show. I guess I don't know what the point of that was.
Citizen. The American people, my War Room audience, they don't care about immigration because of race. They care about it because of American identity, of which we are all Americans, I assume, in here, and that the idea that our government should not be making our lives more difficult.
Adam, do you want to?
I disagree entirely. This administration is absolute.
How do you know the Vidal versus Buckley beef of all things? There's some fucking movie that I watched a long time ago called is it The Best of Enemies? That goes over the whole memes between the two.
looking at immigration through a racial lens. You can look at the temporary protected status they have removed from many groups, all minority groups. You can look at the refugee status they are allowing from South Africa. They are banning countries from coming in, or people from countries that are black or that look a certain way, but white refugees are the only ones that are being allowed to come in. Stephen Miller's guidance of this immigration policy is absolutely racial.
We have to get to student questions.
Okay.
Olivia Anstadt, freshman political science major. So what's your question?
Thank you for having me. So I think we can all agree that social media is inherently biased towards extremists and very controversial people, seeing as their content invokes emotion and therefore they attract a much larger audience. And that being said, how do we now as a society recenter our popular media around truth, diversity, and good intent in this age that is so fueled by bias and prejudice?
That's a really good question.
Take it.
I don't have the exact answer. I mean, that's a really good question, but I know exactly what you were talking about. The algorithms currently incentivize and promote the most outrageous content. I think this gives us a warped perception of each other, and I think it quite frankly allows extremists to control the media message, and it elects extremists. We are currently living in an environment where the social media incentivization of radicalization is beginning to translate into our electeds being more radical because they're using social media, therefore they're giving more and more radical takes, and they're elected.
What do you think about the algorithms and their ability to potentially throttle or incentivize certain actors?
Well, I think you got to differentiate it between pre-Elon purchasing Twitter and post.
Definitely.
Oh my God. He says definitely, but she's going to say it's gotten way better now with Elon, right? Is she? Or will she admit that it isn't? I don't know. I don't know. We'll see.
And I think that a lot of this stuff started in 2017 after President Trump won, where you saw a lot of the elites, Republican and Democrat, it's no secret that the Republican establishment did not want him to win, I think start to be very fearful of free speech on the internet. And after that was the advent of what we call the censorship industrial complex, where you saw the propping up, I mean, almost overnight, of this whole entire grant-making industry to universities, to NGOs, to the sort of idea of media literacy, where they were funding studies not just to censor misinformation, but these very radical ideas of pre-bunking and debunking misinformation around topics that we all in this room would not agree on are actually misinformation. And that stuff was leveraged to, I don't know, censor the sitting president of the United States and rip him off of every social media network ever.
Well, we say sitting president, technically he was, but him getting banned and everything was after J6. So I mean, he was already voted out of office. They'd already did it was for 2 weeks, right? But
even probably Uber Eats. So that was the culmination.
Didn't work, did it, though?
Well, but this is the point, because the censorship is not actually of falsehoods. It's censorship of ideas that threaten the power of the current ruling elite, the regime. Whether or not they think their ideas are true or not, it doesn't matter. They use censorship as a tool of political power.
Okay. Morgan Mighty, class of 2027, what is your question?
Thank you. So I wanted to ask, how should digital influencers be held accountable, given that they often fail to disclose biases while their content also operates within social media algorithms that subtly recommend content that potentially sway users toward particular political affiliations or trains of thought without their knowledge?
It's hard. That's the problem with digital media, is that it's decentralized. Anybody can post anything with any lies at any moment, and it can be boosted in the algorithm. So how do you hold people like that accountable? I guess through tension with people who disagree with them. For example, if I see someone spreading BS in my Twitter algorithm, I quote tweet them, and I make sure that I push back and hold them accountable.
When it comes to, I've heard you talk about sort of your POV and bias, and you're very clear that you have a point of view, you have your own bias, and your position is it's your responsibility to reveal that bias, and the audience then gets to decide what to do with that. Is that a fair characterization of how you would take on that question?
100%. I mean, I don't think I'm unique. I think everybody has a bias, right? And I think that bias can be shown in ways, honestly, beyond just the actual coverage of stories. It's the issues that people choose to cover or not to cover, right? I think this idea of holding people accountable and always having to outsource what you have within yourself to do. You know how you hold people accountable? If they're lying, don't consume or share their stuff.
Don't
reward. Yes.
That's my point. You don't have
No talking to the other person. Adam, disgusting. Don't you dare talk to her. Let the host guide the conversation.
Lying, don't consume or share their stuff.
Don't reward them for their lies.
That's my point. You don't have to.
Oh, no, I think he was agreeing. Okay, anyway, you're good.
Feed the beast.
Yeah. We're coming up on the 250th anniversary of this country. And I think there's this question about what is it going to mean to be an American into the next century? So I just want to put that question to both of you as we approach our 250th anniversary. You take it first, Natalie.
I think it means to understand and appreciate our founding for what it was, how just amazing and unique and novel, and in a time period where the ideas that they were advancing were so radical, but how we have just come to feel them as second nature. I think that is what it means to be an American. If you go back to those founding documents and the rich, raw, and vigorous debate that they had, I think you can find answers to a lot of questions that we're having now, not just textually, but the spirit of, I believe in something, you believe in something, you believe in something, my audience believes in something, that's why they make their phone calls. It's worth fighting for. We probably shouldn't have won the Revolutionary War, but somehow by the grace of God we did, and I think that's what it's about.
Adam?
I agree with a lot of that. I think that the founding of this country was amazing. Of course, it's amazing, genuinely. I think the debates that you can read at some of the conventions are very, very interesting, of course. When I think of American values in a present day setting, I think of things like democracy or human dignity or peaceful transfer of power or strength and decency on the global stage. I view America as a leader, a leader of things on the global stage. My fear is a lot of that is being stripped away. So when I think of American values, I think of decency, democracy, peaceful transfer of power. I don't see those being represented by our leadership right now.
All right. Adam Mockler, Natalie Richards. Thank you for joining me on Firing Line, and best of luck to you as we watch your careers moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Firing Line with Margaret Hoover is made possible in part by Robert Granieri, Vanessa and Henry Cornell, the Fairweather Foundation,
Wow.
the Tepper Foundation,
Wow.
Peter and Mary Calico,
Wow.
Pritzker Military Foundation,
Wow.
Cliff and Laurel Asmus,
Wow.
and by the following.
Newsom panel in Munich. Boring. Obama. Okay.
It is my honor to be joined by the 44th President of the United States, Barack Obama. Mr. President, thanks so much for joining me.
It is wonderful
to be joined by the 44th President of the United States.
Wait, have I criticized him for this before? There's a digital camera movement. It's trying to make it look like there's camera movement, but it's digitally done, right? Why?
It is my honor to be joined by the 44th
This?
President of the United States, Barack Obama. Mr. President, thanks so much for joining me.
It is wonderful to be here, Brian. Thank you for having me.
So as you know, better than anybody, the discourse has devolved into a level of cruelty that we haven't seen before. What was disqualifying just a few years ago now not only feels fine, acceptable, but actually rewarded. You have administration officials saying that the victims of ISIS aggression are domestic terrorists. You have J.D. Vance coming out and saying that it's okay. You don't have to apologize for being white. Just days ago, Donald Trump put a picture of your face on an ape's body. And so again, this is kind of, we've seen the de-evolution of the discourse. How do we come back from a place that we have fallen into?
Well,
the weird thing, I guess, or the crazy, is it really crazy? The weird thing is I just don't know why you wouldn't just pay a guy to actually like hold a camera. Because he has the money for it, right? And I'm sure he's got the crew. Or maybe they just don't care that much. I don't know.
First of all, I think it's important to recognize that the majority of the American people find this behavior deeply troubling. It is true that it gets attention. It's true that it's a distraction. But as I'm traveling around the country, as you're traveling around the country, you meet people. They still believe in decency, courtesy, kindness, and there's this sort of clown show that's happening in social media and on television. And what is true is that there doesn't seem to be any shame about this among people who used to feel like you had to have some sort of decorum and a sense of propriety and respect for the office, right? So that's been lost. But the reason I point out that I don't think the majority of the American people approve of this is because ultimately the answer is going to come from the American people. And we just saw this in Minnesota, in Minneapolis. It is important for us to recognize the unprecedented nature of what ICE was doing in Minneapolis, St. Paul, the way that federal agents, ICE agents, were being deployed without any clear guidelines, training, pulling people off, out of their homes, using 5-year-olds to try to
bait their parents.
Yeah. Pretty weird.
All the stuff that we saw.
Pretty weird.
Tear gassing crowds simply who were standing there, not breaking any laws. So the rogue behavior of agents of the federal government.
Why does the noise get on the mic so bad? Stop baiting me with questions, okay? But the reason why is because these are way too far from the speaker.
Is deeply concerning and dangerous. But we should take a moment to appreciate the extraordinary outpouring of organizing, community building, decency, neighbors buying groceries for folks, accompanying children to school, teachers who were standing up for their kids, not just randomly, but in a systematic, organized way. Citizens saying, this is not the America we believe in, and we're going to fight back, and we're going to push back with the truth, and with cameras, and with peaceful protests, and
oh yeah, hacker! Look at those items.
Sort of behavior that.
Oh, that's a big refund. Damn, what run was that? Hell yeah! That feels good.
In the past, we've seen in authoritarian countries, and we've seen in dictatorships, but we have not seen in America. And that kind of heroic, sustained behavior in sub-zero weather by ordinary people is what should give us.
Yeah, with all the barricades and zip lines.
It should remind us that at the end of the day, the way we get a democracy that's working, the way we get policies that actually are helping working families, get ahead, the way that we restore norms, rule of law, decency, it's going to be because we citizens are activated and paying attention and saying enough and saying, we have a different idea of what the American family should look like and community should look like, and that is what I'm seeing across the board. So, I was on a panel a while back, and I said, a lot of the values that we say we subscribe to during easy times, during peaceful times, it's easy to say we believe in those things.
Right, when they're not challenged.
When they're not challenged. It's easy to believe in free speech when it doesn't seem like the government's trying to crack down on free speech. It's easy to say that we believe in the golden rule when we aren't at risk of being arrested when we exercise the golden rule.
Brian, okay. They also don't have these mics shock mounted, or something is happening. I don't know how a hit on the couch is making it all the way to the mic. That's wild.
We believe in the golden rule when.
This is the SM58's come with a shock mount though. I don't know how it's making it all the way to the mic. What's happening there?
We aren't at risk of being arrested when we exercise the golden rule.
Yeah.
Right now we're being tested. And the good news is what we saw in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and what we're seeing in places across the country, including here in Los Angeles, has been the American people saying, no, you know what, at least a good number of the American people saying, we're going to live up to those values that we say we believe in. And as long as we have folks doing that, I feel like we're going to get through this.
So I hear and appreciate what you're saying about the agency of individuals. As we look toward our elected officials, our democratic leaders, I think something that I've been having a lot of trouble reconciling is for so long, it's felt like Democrats are solely focused on protecting norms, institutions, processes, and then you've got a Republican Party that sees what it wants and will find a way to get it. Laws be damned, Constitution be damned, rules be damned. And we're seeing that play out right now. And so, given this massive asymmetry, where it often leaves us feeling like it's a Lucy pulling the football away from Charlie Brown over and over and over again situation, what needs to be done? And do you think that our Democratic leadership and our Democratic elected officials understand that for the first time?
Well, look, I think we have to acknowledge that we've got the harder job, right? So we believe in government as a tool for good, as a potential force to create more jobs, and as a way to make sure that the planet doesn't roast, to make sure that as we move forward and the economy grows, that everybody and not just some are benefiting, and the kids are getting a good education. And what that means is that we have to think about the consequences of our actions. We have to try to figure out how do we get working majorities to actually pass laws and to implement those laws and to make things happen. Tearing stuff down doesn't require all that. So when you talk about Republicans, for example, it seems like they see what they want and they just go after it. Well, they passed one significant piece of legislation since they've been, for all the hoopla.
Kind of. If you even count that as passing the one big beautiful, it was just like a budget reconciliation, right? I mean,
institutionalized much anything. They have poured a huge amount of money into ICE and their immigration agenda, and they've cut taxes for really wealthy people, and now they're trying to unravel a bunch of rules and norms and laws that are already in place. That's an easier job. So I say that because we should accept the responsibility and the challenge that our job's going to be a little bit harder. Because in order for us to get stuff done, like let's say the Affordable Care Act, well, we've got to cobble together a majority, and we've got to persuade, and we've got to convince. And so I do think that there's been some unwillingness on the part of Democrats in the past to break down some of the institutional barriers for us getting stuff done.
Filibuster.
Just because, well, it's always been done that way. And I'll give you an example that frustrated the heck out of me when I was president.
It's got to be
the filibuster in the Senate.
Josiah just calmed.
The Senate is already structurally skewed and anti-majoritarian, right? It's hard for
not very nice
to get
guys
stuff done whether it's trying to pass civil rights legislation in the 60s or trying to get gun control legislation or what have you, because even though the majority of people support it, Delaware and Wyoming have the same number of senators as California, right? All right, so that would require a constitutional amendment. You then compound that with a filibuster, and the truth is that Democrats for some time have been traditionalists in wanting to preserve that when it blocks us from making government effective, which in turn makes people feel like government is corrupt and not caring about them.
Which lends itself
to
bad guys back there.
The kind of, it gives folks like Trump an opening, right? So redistricting is another good example of where I strongly believe we...
Sorry, fuck. What if they kill those poor guys? I'm trying to get peaceful cues. Oh no, my friends are dying. Pick your friend up. Oh, look, I helped him. No. These are the guys who tried to kill me, okay? Good job, you got him. Good job, guys. Oof. Those guys just got terminated!
We should not be having politicians draw lines that determine who's voting for them. We should have voters decide who their politicians are. And I've worked with Eric Holder to help set up the terrific work that the NDRC has been doing to try to make sure that we have fair maps. But the fact that Governor Newsom here in California and others said, well, if they're going to try to gerrymander their way out of losing this upcoming midterm, then we're going to respond. And we're going to respond in a lawful way where we put it up to a referendum and let people decide and not just give away the store because of traditions.
Hey,
that
not
was
nice.
the right response. So I do think that I don't want us to simply duplicate the behavior of the other side.
True.
I don't want us to have a slash and burn strategy where we don't care about rule of law. We don't care about some of the guardrails around our democracy. We start lying and having no regard for the truth the way the other side seems to be comfortable with right now. Because if that's how we fight, then we lose what we're fighting for. But that doesn't mean we have to get punked or be saps. And I do, or to cling to traditions just for the sake of tradition. I think what we have to continually evaluate is, in this moment in time, how do we make sure that we can advance our agenda in a way that reflects what's good for ordinary folks, not special interests, not simply the well-to-do, and how do we do that in a way that's consistent with integrity, honesty, democracy, the values that we claim to want to uphold. And I think it's possible to do that. But the reason I started with reminding ourselves, yes, we have a harder job, because sometimes I think we're tough on Democrats, saying, why aren't you being as mean, tough, and nasty as they are? Well, it's
trying to build something instead of destroy something.
President of the United States, I suppose I could have simply unilaterally ordered the military to, go into some red state and harass and intimidate a governor there, or cut off funding for states that didn't vote for me. I could have exercised that prerogative, but that is contrary to how I think our...
Be careful, there's bad guys over there. I'm not gonna make it out of here alive.
Use that metro entrance.
Democracy is supposed to work, and I think we shouldn't get discouraged by the fact that we have a tougher job. What we should do is expect that our side is smart enough to figure it out.
So you had mentioned persuasion, and I think that that's a really good point here, because as we eventually head toward a next general election cycle, we're going to be contending with a lot of the same infighting that's plagued Democrats before. You'll often have leftists and progressives butting up against liberals and moderates. And look, you are the ultimate pragmatist, and so what advice do you have as we head toward this election cycle, this eventual 2020 election cycle, so that we don't devolve into the same 2016 era Bernie Hillary redux that feels like it always consumes the left?
Well, look, first of all, I think it's important to remember that the divisions in the Democratic Party tend to get magnified in the media. Relative to the divides that exist in most other countries, where you have a parliamentary system, you have multiple parties, and you got Green Party, and you got the center-left party, and you've got a socialist party, and sometimes you got a communist party. Our differences get exaggerated. Listen, Bernie Sanders believes, just like Nancy Pelosi believes, just like Chuck Schumer believes, just like Hakeem Jeffries believes, just like
Can we
AOC believes,
not?
in equality and non-discrimination against people because of race or gender or sexual orientation. Well, all Democrats believe in that. That's a core value. Democrats believe that government should
not nice, dude.
provide
Very mean.
a strong safety net for people when they're down on their luck. Everybody I just mentioned believes in that. Everybody believes that there should be some regulation of the market so that you don't have monopolies and oligopolies that are simply dictating the terms of the economy, and that we should have a tax system that levels out some of the inequalities that result. So I think it's important for us to remind ourselves as a starting point, what do we have in common? Most of the time, the differences are tactical. Right? It has to do with, well, how much of a tax hike can people put up with? How much regulation should we be thinking about when it comes to climate change? And if we recognize that typically...
I might have downed 2 people, but I didn't kill them. Okay, I'm so sorry. Overall, I think this was Embark will think this was a peaceful run, I believe.
The arguments in the Democratic Party aren't about core values, but are really around tactics and how do you get stuff done. Now we can have a robust debate, and I want a robust debate.
Yeah.
And what we can also do is not try to nationalize every issue all the time. This last off-year election, I think, was a great example. You know, you've got a candidate like Spanberger in Virginia, who runs what would be considered a more centrist campaign, and runs a terrific campaign. And then you've got Mondani in New York, who runs a explicitly socialist grassroots campaign and excites and mobilizes folks, and that can win in New York City. It probably could not win in Virginia, and that's okay. That's healthy.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think we get into arguments. A recent one, this idea that the quote unquote abundance agenda is somehow a sellout, and folks on the left getting exercised because this is part of this sort of corporate Democrats trying to
goddamn corpo dems.
Well, no, not really. What I think it is entirely legitimate to say, for example, we need to build more affordable housing, which is going to require higher taxes on people like me and people who are well off in order to subsidize the construction of affordable housing, let's say in a place like California, and also be able to say, you know what, there are a bunch of well-intentioned rules and zoning laws and so forth that
Hearing him speak genuinely makes me sad, not because of anything doing with politics Trump just starts to listen to. It is a marked difference between like real life people who, or not real life, but like people who can speak well and have real political positions and are just so much, they're just better people. I'm trying to say it, but they're just better people. They really are.
Boomers like me and existing homeowners have used to block the construction of affordable housing, even in democratic cities. And so if we want to actually deliver housing rather than have some abstract argument, then we got to figure out not an either or of do we spend more money or do we reform some of these things that are preventing the construction of affordable housing. We have to do both. And I want us to have those arguments. And one last thing I think that's I've noticed in a lot of our internal arguments, a lot of which, by the way, are taking place online and ordinary voters. This is all completely off their radar screen. Yeah. One of the things I think it's important for Democrats, for us also to recognize, progressives to recognize, folks on the left to recognize, it's possible for us to have a moral sense of what is right and true and what needs to be done, and also recognize that we are in a particular time and place here in America, and voters are not going to agree with us 100% on everything. And so it is not a sellout, it's not a betrayal to say that we're going to shape our agenda and our message in a way that allows us to build a working majority to get stuff done. And I think particularly around social issues, sometimes we get confused around this. You witness what happened in Minneapolis, and you say to yourself, morally speaking, that 5-year-old child who's standing in front of that SUV as his father's being dragged off, that child is equal to mine or any child. His immigration status, his nationality, does not change the love and decency that we should be showing that child. But what is also true is that we're a nation of laws, we have borders, and we've got to figure out an immigration policy that is orderly and that is fair and is enforced in a sensible way that is compatible with our values, but may not fully capture the degree to which that kid should have the same chances in life as a U.S. citizen kid. But we've got to accommodate the reality that the majority of American people think that there's a difference between somebody who's a U.S. citizen and somebody who's not, and that they want an orderly immigration system. And sometimes I think what happens in the online debate is if somebody suggests, well, we have to have some immigration enforcement, then somebody's going to point at that child and say, well, so you don't care about that kid,
Yeah.
so you must be a bad person. The same would be true, let's say, here in Los Angeles around the homeless issue. I think morally, ethically speaking, it is an atrocity that in a country this wealthy we have people just on the streets. And we should have we should insist on policies that recognize their full humanity, people who are houseless, and be able to provide them the help and resources that they need. But we should also recognize that the average person, doesn't want to have to navigate around a tent city in the middle of downtown. And that we're not going to be able to build.
I will say, because of like the queues that we're in, we're definitely in like more friendly queues. Like these people are not PvPers. Everybody that's tried to attack me has been really, really, really bad. So that's good at least.
Yeah, I think we're already in some shit queues. I mean, I don't know. They're all shooting you on sight now.
Yeah, they are, but they're so bad. Guys, I'm just a farmer. Why are you so mean? This guy just like ran me down with a with a fucking pickaxe. What's wrong with my face? Well, because I'm white. Is that what's going on here? Unbelievable.
A working majority and support for the resources that we need to help folks like that, whether it's drug treatment or temporary housing or what have you. We're not going to be able to generate support for it if we simply say, you know what, it's not their fault, and so they should be able to do whatever they want, because that's a losing political strategy. That doesn't mean that we care less about those folks. It means if we really care about them, then we got to try to figure out how do we gain majority support and be practical in terms of what we can get through at this moment in time and build on those victories. That a lot of times is the arguments that are taking place, but they become sort of performative, and people start saying, oh, you're selling out, or conversely, I think sometimes folks at the center say, you're being impractical and dismissing legitimate critiques and concerns. And what we need to be able to do is to maintain both ideas at the same time, which is our long-term goals have to be driven by our values and our core beliefs and our ethics and our morals, in the sense that every person counts. And short-term, we got to win elections. Right. And anyway, the good news is, I think that the folks that we are fighting politically, the current White House, this administration, and their enablers, they're behaving so badly, they're doing such crazy stuff, that it shouldn't be hard for our side to coalesce around the areas where we agree on and focus on that. And I think that that is going to happen if we are effective in winning the midterms, if we then have a robust primary for who's going to be the next Democratic president. We shouldn't be afraid of having a robust debate. I want all comers to sort this out. I benefited from having about as grueling a primary as I could have. It made me a better candidate.
We need all comers.
Ultimately made me a better president, because I had been tested. My ideas had been tested. The story I was telling about America had been tested. And that's what we should be looking for, rather than expecting that somehow we're going to all come up with some consensus blueprint master plan that everybody's going to execute. Democrats aren't good at doing that anyway.
Yeah. Well, I think one block of voters who I think there has been particular focus paid to right now is young voters, and you were able to mobilize a generation of young voters in a way that hadn't been done before. I got involved in politics because of you, and in fact, a lot of millennials, folks my age, got involved in politics because of you. Like when I was a student, you could not find any other students on campus who were not supporting your campaign. Democrats and you had owned the cultural zeitgeist in a way that hadn't been done before, and frankly hasn't been done since. And we've seen a shift happen, obviously, from.
Wait, what did you say? Hey, bro, chill. These guys are so bad. That's good for us, though. Why are you doing this? It doesn't have to be this way. Oh, him saying that makes me want to kill him so bad. I didn't bring any healing items. These guys. It has to be this way? That's okay. Wow, look. Even Embark thinks you're being a meanie. That was Arc Karma, okay? What did you just call me the B word? Why are you so mean? What's going on? Talk to me. What's going on in your life right now? You feel like you have to act this way? Block him. Do you think he's got a survivor kit? Oh! Wait! Okay. Talk to me. What's going on? What's wrong? Something happening in school? Oh, I bet I'm a higher level than him, so I can crawl faster. So I can... How are your grades? How are your friends? Do you do any after-school sports or anything? Wait, that's kind of weird. That's like pedo shit. Oh no! He died! He didn't have a survivor augment. Well. Rep dies of cringe, I guess.
I think what you think is friendly is a lot different than what I think is friendly cues.
Well, when I say friendly cues, what I mean is that, like, these people are really bad. Have the people been shooting you? Are they really bad?
I mean, they're bad, but they're all kill on sight.
That's okay, though, because we need to kill them anyway when we do our trial. But if these are the plays we have to run through, we can slaughter them. Okay, slaughter villages of these people. We're in better. This is better than peaceful queues. We're in bad PvP queues. That means we're not going to load into people trying to do their trials either. So this is just a pure win, a win-win, one might say. Hold on, I got to get out with my cautious or whatever survivor augment is crucial.
No. 2008, 2012, up to 2024. Right. And for the first time, we saw Democrats really lose their grip on culture in a way that hadn't happened before. And so what is your advice in terms of remobilizing a generation of Americans that we've had trouble mobilizing up to this point?
Well, look, part of it has to do with the fact that I was young.
Yeah. So maybe don't nominate
well, look, I'm 64 now. I'm pretty healthy, 64. Feel great.
Yeah.
But
okay, fuck. I don't want to meme about being a victim or anything, okay? But, like, is getting swatted really politics? I feel like if Hasan got swatted, I don't know if that would get removed from LSF. But, okay, based. Based?
The truth is, half of the references that my daughters make about social media, TikTok, etc., I don't know who they're talking about.
Yeah.
There is a element of, at some point,
we're extractors here. Hell yeah.
Directly to the immediate struggles that folks are going through. And so
LSF has had a no swatting clips rule for a while. Oh, really? Oh, well, never mind if that's the case. Just kidding.
I'm not making a hard and fast rule here, but I do think that Democrats do well when we have candidates who are plugged into the moment, to the zeitgeist, to the times, and the particular struggles that folks are thinking about as they look towards the future rather than look backward toward the past. And so some of it is choosing candidates who check that box. I do think that
the fact that you need that rule, I think that's probably a fair rule, because generally people don't like. When I was out there, I tried to ask him, can you not go into the room? But like halfway through the sentence, I realized that it sounds like the shadiest thing ever. Like, you just got called in here because somebody said I killed my mom, and I was saying, don't go into that room to the right when you enter my apartment. So I didn't even bother.
There is an element of joy that that Democrats lost sometimes. Our campaign was fun. We had look, it wasn't always fun for me. But we built a community. We gave people a sense that if you are part of this, you're doing something meaningful. And it wasn't just talk. Young people ran our campaigns. We empowered them. We put them in charge. They were out there figuring stuff out. I'm not the person who was figuring out our media strategy. I was not the person who was out there, knocking on doors and talking to voters and creating events. It was 20 and 30-year-olds. And so what happened in our campaign, and what you recently saw in Mondami's campaign in New York,
yeah.
when there's that sense of joy and engagement and involvement, then people feel like, all right, this is not just some transactional grind. This is...
Do you know who's doing this shit? I have no idea, actually. In order from most likely to least likely, I know that, like, the the most likely I would have to say is probably somebody related to the Justical Discord server, just because that Saba dude is so crazy and because they greenlight so much insane behavior over there. Then the next might be Kiwi Farms. Maybe people are mad that the court case isn't going how they wished it would, so this is like their way of getting revenge or whatever. And then third might be some tanky-ish person, maybe. I don't know if like a Hasan community person would ever swamp me or anything. I'm not sure. Distant Fort, maybe somebody in Asmongold's community. Although I don't know if they SWAT or anything. I feel like they wouldn't do that, but
this is me.
What'd the cops say? They just asked me basic questions: who I was, if anybody else was in my apartment, if my mom was in my apartment. Am I sure nobody else is in my apartment? But once I explained that I was a streamer and all that, we had a meeting of the minds and understanding. And I was like, wait, I gotta get my guns in my apartment. Then I ran over, and then all 9 of them fought with me. And I beat 6 of them up, but then the other 2 got me down, so.
Becoming part of a community and joining with others. And I think young people will respond to that. And then a corollary to that is I do think that culturally, and I've talked about this before, we did turn off. I think there was a certain way of talking about issues for Democrats where we sounded like scolds. And I've said this before. There was a virtue signaling that made it seem as if ordinary folks, if they did not say things in exactly the right way or meet this litmus test, that they were being chastised, pushed away. And the truth is, most of us, all of us, are complicated, and we have blind spots, and sometimes we say dumb stuff. And if you want to create an environment that is welcoming and makes people feel, okay, there's room for me here, then the message and the...
We laugh, but to get a little cringe at realistic, she got swatted. True. I think it's attempted murder in my mind. That's right. That's how I would view it, but you know.
Story we tell has to be, all right, none of us are perfect. All of us count. We all have good in us that we can tap into. We can all learn from each other. And I think that is something we need to recover. That's part of the fun of politics. That's part of the community and the social bonding that can come about. And we saw that in Minneapolis. I mean, somebody showed me a friend of mine, Michelle Norris, is from Minnesota, and she was up there, and she was going around talking to neighbors and people she had known for a long time as they were mobilizing protests and activities around ICE. And she showed me a clip of...
Is there anything that we as viewers can do? Not really. Why, though? Why? Why? You guys don't have to do this. Oh, shit. These guys were a little better. They set traps and everything. What's going on? Very not cool.
Scary.
Yeah, they're to the left. There they are. Yeah, good job. Oh, good. Get him, quick. Yeah, run. Oh, wait. Oh, you're actually... Oh, shit, that's you. Wait, do you have a smoke grenade? Oh, I thought I was talking to you. Do you have a smoke? Okay. Wait, pick me... Why'd you stop picking me up? They're gonna get us.
We're fine.
I scared them off with my sick baits. How do you make the decision in your mind of, is it really if the police or somebody pretending to be police? Well, stop. Don't. I've got you cornered. We've got 20 traps set up. If you come around that corner. Yeah, that's right. Back up. Don't do it. Yeah, get out of here. Skedaddle. I mean, if it's like 9 people in police uniforms outside, I feel like it's probably... that would be a high effort. Imposter thing. If somebody's going to go through that amount of effort to get that many people together, you know what? I'd say let them have it, okay? That's your way of baiting me.
I already opened it.
Fuck you. When is the night raid?
Which one for Stella?
Yeah. Is it in 10 minutes or an hour and 10 minutes?
I actually don't remember, to be honest. I think it's like in an hour, 10 minutes.
Okay. I'll check when we get out.
This street band that was performing every night after all these activities had been taking place and protests, etc. And they were just out there and they were playing music, and I'm trying to figure out how they were playing, horns and drums, etc. in like 0-degree weather, because I would not have been able to put my lips on a trumpet. And
you said they had the wrong address that they swatted. No, somebody added like an extra 1 or 0 to my address. I'm guessing whoever swatted just fucked up, or whoever took the call fucked up, because I don't know if anybody would think to fuck my address up in that way. But the name will come up as mine, so they asked the front desk what apartment I was in.
People were celebrating what they had accomplished. And it was an embodiment of the values that make us care about other people. And that, I think, is...
Why would you reveal this information? Well, because whoever did it once already knows that it works. So, I mean, what's the point? What do you mean? I don't know how many swatting fans I have out there, but...
Spirit, that when Democrats tap into that spirit, then we win. The other side does the mean, angry...
demagoguery.
Exclusive, us, them, divisive politics. That's their home court.
Yeah.
Our court is coming together. Our court is, look, a great example. Wasn't political. Bad Bunny's halftime show.
I knew you were going to say that.
Well,
at what point can you sue the police for harassment? Why would you sue the police for harassment? The police are just doing their job. If they get a call on some crazy shit, you would expect that they would go to the place and check it out, right? That's kind of their job.
It resonated. It was smart because it wasn't preaching. It was showing. It was demonstrating and displaying. This is what a community is. And people who did not speak Spanish and have never been to Puerto Rico, they saw that elderly woman serving a drink and the kids dancing with their grandmas, and it was intergenerational, and it was a reminder.
Wait, what? What'd you just ping?
Security breach.
Ooh, you know what that security breach has? That's got my Tempest BP.
Yep.
Of what Dr. King called the beloved community can look like, which is not perfect, and it's messy sometimes. And I guarantee you, not all those lyrics were probably politically correct. And if you translated them, and they're people are complicated, but there was a sense of, all right, there's room for everybody.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is where we win.
Your presidential center is opening up this summer, and you've dedicated your post-presidency to lifting up the next generation of leaders, oftentimes in defiance of people begging and pleading with you to stay involved in the political process. And so why is it important for you to defer to those people, especially at a moment where it feels like there is a vacuum of leadership on the left? You are among, if not the most popular politician in America, and so you're right here.
Do you feel like cops are more aware of what swatting is these days? Yeah, 100%. Because I heard the lady in the back say something when they were pulling out, like, oh, I think he's a streamer. And then when I explained to the cop what was happening, he seemed like he knew pretty quickly what was going on. So I think they're probably pretty aware of it at this point.
Here, and so why is it important?
Like cops in general are broadly aware of what that is.
For you in this moment to make sure that you defer to others?
Well, first of all, I'm not a politician anymore, and I can't be. Right? I mean, I guess technically I could run for city council or something, but I'm not in elected office. I don't have levers of power. I'm term limited out, and by the way, I believe in the Constitution, and also I believe in my marriage, and Michelle would divorce me even if I could run again. But I've always believed, I mean, this has been a central tenet of my work even before I was in elected office, that our job as leaders is to lift up other leaders, to empower others, to find their gifts and help them exercise those gifts. And so when I left the presidency, I said, what's our foundation going to do? We care about climate change, we care about racial justice, we care about healthcare, we care about a whole bunch of issues, and I work on those issues. Now, right now, I'm spending a lot of time helping to think about how we're going to respond to AI as it's coming down the pike, and it's moving fast. So I care about specific issues, but the thing I thought I could do uniquely, Michelle and I still have...
Or is the state going to pursue the caller? They just use an IP caller thing from a VPN. I don't think... I mean, I imagine they would look, but they'd probably see that it's just a random IP address or whatever, or random phone number from outside of the country. I don't think there's much they can do.
The capacity, not just here in the United States, but globally, to inspire and motivate young people and invite them into this process. And that's what we need. We just talked about it. You look at where excitement's going to come from. It's going to come from the 20, 30-year-olds who know firsthand what it means to not be able to buy a house, know firsthand what it means to see some of the ladder's opportunity being taken away, have grown up in a moment in which there's more social isolation, right? And so and understand both the good and the bad of social media. And so they're the ones who are going to craft these, who are going to remake our institutions so that they're consistent with the values that are, I think, timeless. And so what we've tried to do at the foundation has been to identify potential leaders, not just with traditional credentials,
1 hour, 6
not
minutes.
just the kids coming out of fancy schools or with the top grades, or
Roger.
But union organizers and grassroots organizers, as well as journalists and teachers and healthcare professionals and human rights activists. And we've now had thousands of folks go through the program, and these are folks who are doing remarkable stuff at very young ages. I mean, they're setting up health clinics in sub-Saharan Africa, or they're designing new programs for intervention to help with the opioid crisis in Appalachia, or they're working on how do we educate kids and using technology in remote rural areas and Native American reservations. Remarkable folks are doing amazing stuff. And the Presidential Center, which will be opening up in June, is going to be the hub around which all this activity happens. And there'll be a museum with Michelle's dresses, since that's what people want to see.
Yeah.
We'll have some sports memorabilia and some cool stuff in there. But really, the heart of the Presidential Center is going to be the music studio, where kids are learning how to tell stories through music, and a place to record podcasts so that they can learn how to talk about the issues in ways that resonate. And there's a Chicago Public Library in there, and there's an auditorium where young people will be exposed to world leaders who are coming through and can talk about their own journey. And what that does is it builds a community of activists, and it reminds people you're not alone. You're not alone in your sorrow when you see some of the stuff that's been happening in this country over the last year, but you're also not alone in being able to figure out how do we push back and come up with new solutions, and how do we remake these institutions so that they work for this generation. And that kind of spirit is what we hope this Presidential Center will constantly refresh and renew. This is kind of a social change university, and we want just ordinary visitors who don't think of themselves as activists, as they go through these exhibits and they see what's been done in the past. We want them to think, well, what can I do?
Really? As I'm staring at this guy, he kills me? Okay. Good one.
And we'll be giving them all kinds of ways in which they can then connect with.
Wait, are these the guys that just killed me? Are they dying to the shredder? Bro, these guys are having like serious issues. Ooh. Okay.
Local organizations and get active in their own communities around the things that they care about. That kind of reinvigorating our civic muscles, giving people a sense of, I'm not going to just sit here and doom scroll or occasionally, tweet some complaint about what's happening, but that I actually have agency and I can actually make a difference. We want to encourage that, and that's what we saw and have been seeing across the country in response to the violations and overreach and lawlessness that's been coming out of this administration. We just have to encourage that and cultivate that, and not assume that it happens on its own. I became president because very early on in my career, I had people teach me the power of community and other people joining together around common interests. And I tried to manifest what I'd learned in every campaign I ran, and try to ride that all the way through my presidency. And I didn't figure out all that stuff on my own. And we have a long history in this country, dating back to the abolitionist movement and the suffragist movement, and on through the civil rights movement and the union movement. And we have a long history internationally. Gandhi learning from Thoreau, who then inspires King, who then inspires Mandela, who in the meantime, like Valesa, is helping to, and Solidarity are helping to bring down the Iron Curtain and inspiring the people power in the Philippines. And that spirit, that energy, it's out there, and you can feel it, but it's bottled up. We haven't given enough outlets for young people to figure out, how do I become a part of that? And that's this enormous untapped power that we have to get back to.
So I want to do a little bit of a lightning round here because it's not often I'll get access to
Come on,
President of the United States. So a couple questions here. Are aliens real?
They're real, but I haven't seen them, and they're not being kept in, what is it?
Area 51?
Area 51. There's no underground facility, unless there's this enormous conspiracy, and they hid it from the President of the United States.
What was the first question you wanted answered when you became president?
Where are the aliens?
Where are the aliens? Is there a person that you most want to meet that you haven't met yet?
Are there aliens? Wait.
Being president, or even being the next president, I can kind of meet everybody, so I've met a lot of folks. The person who I have not yet met, and that I'm looking forward to meeting, and I hope I get an opportunity sometime in the future, is
Destiny
the new
Stephen
Pope, who's from Chicago and a White Sox fan. I had the pleasure of getting to know Pope Francis pretty well, and he was legit. You know, there's some figures. He's one. The Dalai Lama was another. Is another who they're how you hope they are. They kind of walk the walk. And my sense of this new Pope is he's from that. He's cut from that cloth. You know, somebody who worked.
I mean, he's the Pope. Of course he's a real. What do you mean? Yeah, it's the Pope. That's like the safest answer in the universe. Oh my God, the Pope. He's got good reasons, though.
In places, that really needed help, and what wasn't just preaching from a pulpit, but getting his hands dirty, trying to help people. So I'm looking forward to talking to him.
I think we can. I think
at some point I'll probably have. Yeah.
What world leader did you like the most and the least?
Ooh, the least.
There are a lot of world leaders I enjoyed. Angela Merkel, I became very close to because she really was the leader of Europe during my presidency, and we were grappling with a bunch of different stuff. She came from a center-right tradition. I obviously come from a center-left position, but she had integrity, very wicked smart, and we're both analytical and practical, and try to figure out how to problem solve. And so she became a very close partner to mine. I'm gonna defer on the leaders I like least.
Not even Putin.
There's enough of a public record. People probably have a sense of some of the folks who I wasn't happy with.
Best prank out of the White House when you were president?
Look, I'll be honest with you. Folks aren't running pranks in the White House. They're Secret Service. Everybody's busy. If there were pranks, they weren't run on me, and I didn't.
You didn't pull any?
I tended not to pull pranks. People are intimidated enough by a president. You don't want to punch down on a prank. If you're gonna pull off a prank, it's got to be on somebody who can prank you back, and wasn't nobody going to prank me.
All right, last question here. Is Tupac alive?
He's alive on my playlist.
All right, we'll leave it there.
There you go.
Mr. President,
I enjoyed it.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Keep up doing the good work.
Didn't dig into the alien question. Let him slip by on an easy Tupac question.
My name is John Kiriakou. I was a field